Chapter 1845. Many of the guests frowned when they heard Hu Guang's words. Although the Yu Yao cultivators who were invited to this banquet came from different races, none of them had ever tried eating a human before. Even Yu Yao, who had spoken up earlier and was looking forward to the blood sacrifice, revealed a troubled expression. If Purple Jade Island had presented a spirit beast, he would have gladly tasted it. However, it just so happened to be a Yu Yao cultivator. It was just like how Lu Yi had never used his talent tree to refine the energy within a cultivator's body. It wasn't that he couldn't do it, but rather that he had a natural psychological aversion to it. The lively atmosphere suddenly turned cold. Hu Guang smiled when he saw this. "What's wrong? Fellow Taoists, you can eat spirit beasts, but you can't eat anything else? Truth be told, on my purple jade demonic star, only a blood sacrifice of this quality can be considered a true blood sacrifice. The ones from before don't even count. Please believe in me. Today, you will definitely have an unforgettable experience." As he spoke, he turned to Lionheart, "Senior martial brother." Lionheart remained seated and only nodded slightly. "Let's begin." Hu Guang responded and strode towards the bamboo bed. In a few steps, he stood in front of the bamboo bed. With a flip of his wrist, a slender dagger appeared in his hand. "Everyone, don't worry. My knife skills are quite good. I will definitely let everyone taste the freshest blood sacrifice. Before the banquet ends, the blood sacrifice will not die." Hu Guang brandished the dagger, preparing to stab it. It was at this moment that a wine cup suddenly flew out, heading straight for Hu Guang, blocking the short blade's attack. A crisp sound rang out as the wine cup turned into dust. Hu Guang raised his head and looked at Lu Yi. At the same time, Lu Ye's entire body was enveloped by several powerful auras. Almost as soon as he moved to block Hu Guang's attack, these auras descended. They were Purple Jade Island's Yu Yao cultivators. Each of them had an unfriendly expression on their faces. It was clear that they had been prepared. Otherwise, they wouldn't have reacted so quickly. "Fellow Taoist, what is the meaning of this?" Hu Guang narrowed his eyes at Lu Yi. Under the cover of Yu Yao's aura, Lu Yi couldn't do anything. He could only sit where he was and think about how he could save Wei Po's life. However, Hu Guang's aura suddenly became extremely dangerous. He stared at Lu Yi and said, "Fellow cultivator, you might not know this, but the blood sacrifice is a sacred and supreme ceremony for my Yao clan. If anyone dares to interrupt this ceremony, my Yao clan will fight to the death. Although it's said that you are a guest, it's best that you have a suitable reason." Lu Yi didn't want to expose this fellow's feigned ignorance, so he could only say, "Fellow Taoist, please calm down. It's just that the person on the bamboo bed is a cultivator from my Three Realms Island. He mysteriously disappeared a year ago. We've been trying to track him down, but we haven't been able to find him. We don't know how he ended up being captured by your esteemed island and is even being used as a blood sacrifice." Hu Guang was shocked. Are they cultivators from the Three-World Island? His shock was fake, but many of the guests' shock was genuine. However, these guests soon guessed why Purple Jade Island would suddenly invite them over. Today's banquet was obviously Purple Jade Island's deployment against the Three-World Island. They were just spectators. The guests naturally couldn't be bothered with this kind of thing, so they just sat in their seats and watched quietly. Hu Guang didn't wait for Lu Ye's response and asked again, "Fellow Taoist, are you sure this is a cultivator from your Three-World Island?" Lu Yi nodded. "Of course I'm sure." "Very good." Hu Guang's lips curled into a cold smile. He turned to Lionheart and cupped his fists. "Senior brother, the culprit who killed my Purple Jade Island's cultivators has been found." Lionheart coldly harumphed, looking down at Lu Yi with an overbearing gaze. "You Three-World Island really have some guts." Lu Yi frowned. "What do you mean, First Island Master?" Lionheart didn't speak, but Hu Guang continued angrily, "Fellow Taoist, don't you want to know why my Purple Jade Island captured this person and even wanted to use him as a sacrifice? I'll tell you now. A year ago, when this person passed by my Purple Jade Island, he killed several of my Purple Jade Island's cultivators for no reason. That's why my Purple Jade Island captured him. In the past year, we've been investigating this person's background, but unfortunately, we didn't find anything. It turns out that he's from the Three-World Island. He sneered and continued to stare at Lu Yi. Fellow Taoist, my Purple Jade Island has never had any grudges with the Three-World Island. Why would your island's Yu Yao kill my Purple Jade cultivators? Do you think my Purple Jade Island is easy to bully? Lu Yi looked at him and said, my Three-World Island hasn't been established on the Wanxiang Sea for long. Our foundation is still shallow. The island's cultivators have always been cautious and don't easily make enemies. Fellow Taoist, you say that our island's cultivators killed your island's cultivators. Is there a misunderstanding? Lu Yi didn't believe a single word that Wei Pe said that he killed Purple Jade cultivators near Purple Jade Island. However, since he brought this matter up, it was useless for him to refute. The only thing he could do now was to think of a way to save Wei Pe's life. A light voice suddenly came from the opposite side of Lu Yi. It's true that the Three-World Island hasn't been established on the Wanxiang Sea for long, but their battle records are extremely impressive. They captured a high-class spiritual island just like that. Their efficiency and speed are unprecedented in the Wanxiang Sea. I admire them. Fellow Taoist Lu, is this what you meant when you said that the Three-World Island doesn't easily make enemies? That's right. Those who made enemies with the Three-World Island were all killed. Fellow Taoist Lu's words can be seen from a certain perspective. Lu Yi looked at the smiling Yuan Cheng and said calmly, the battle with Baiyue was a self-defense counterattack by my Three-World Island. We didn't initiate the battle. Fellow Taoist Yuan should know the reason best. Why do you have to be so sarcastic? I don't know. Yuan Cheng shook his head. I only know that Baiyue was captured by you. The Yu Yao on Baiyue Island were all killed. If the other constellations didn't run fast enough, they probably wouldn't have been left alive. Fellow Taoist, you're decisive and ruthless. I truly admire you. Come, let me offer you a toast. As he said this, he finished his drink. Lu Yi ignored him. Yuan Cheng was deliberately fanning the flames. There was no point in paying attention to him. He turned to look at Hu Guang and said, Fellow Taoist, you said that my Three-World Islands cultivators killed the Purple Jade cultivators. There must be a misunderstanding. Can you release the restriction so that I can ask? Hu Guang said coldly, there's no misunderstanding. I saw what happened that day with my own eyes. I was the one who captured this person. Lu Yi couldn't help but frown. Hu Guang's words were so firm that there was no room for him to mediate. Just as he was thinking, Hu Guang changed the topic and said, previously I, Zi Xian, have been investigating this person's background. Now that I know he is a cultivator of the Three-World Island and fellow Taoist Lu is the third island master of the Three-World Island, can you give me an explanation? Lu Yi asked, what kind of explanation do you want? Without a second thought, Hu Guang immediately raised two fingers. Every Zishuan cultivator who was killed will be compensated with 200 million spirit jades. Those dead cultivators were the mainstays of their respective clans. Their deaths will be a fatal blow to the development of their respective clans. Lu Yi didn't expect Hu Guang to raise such a condition. He couldn't help but ask, how much? Hu Guang said, he killed 5 Purple Jade cultivators. The total is 1 billion. Lu Yi looked at him. 1 billion spirit jades for his life? Hu Guang smiled faintly. If fellow Taoist thinks it's too expensive, you don't have to agree. Lu Yi asked, fellow Taoist, are you sure that I can take him away from Purple Jade Island safely if I hand over 1 billion spirit jades? Hu Guang nodded and said, of course. Lu Yi nodded. Please wait a moment. As he said this, he took out a sound talisman and pretended to send a message. Hu Guang was stunned. He didn't expect Lu Yi to agree so readily. 1 billion spirit jades for Yu Yao's life. Not everyone had this kind of decisiveness. He offered 1 billion spirit jades to force Lu Yi to agree to other conditions. After all, this wasn't a good deal. If Wei Pe was really talented and had a promising future, then so be it. However, although Wei Pe was talented, no one could say for sure what his future would be like. On the other side, on the Three-World Island, Lu Yi opened his eyes and looked at Luan Xiao, who had been waiting for him. Senior sister, quickly prepare 1 billion spirit jades. What are you going to do with the spirit jades? Luan Xiao was shocked. To buy Wei Po's life. Lu Yi briefly explained the situation with his clone. Luan Xiao's expression was conflicted. After a while, she gritted her teeth and said, "Junior brother, even if you really give them 1 billion spirit jades, Purple Jade Island won't let this matter rest. Wei Po probably won't survive." Purple Jade Island had waited for a year to complete their current plan. How could they easily reach a compromise with the three-world island? The compensation of 1 billion spirit jades was just a pretext. Purple Jade Island didn't expect Lu Yi to agree to this proposal. Their goal wasn't 1 billion spirit jades anyway. Therefore, in Luan Xiao's opinion, sending 1 billion spirit jades over was a complete waste. It wasn't that she didn't want to part with 1 billion spirit jades. Although 1 billion spirit jades was a huge sum, with the current foundation of the three-world island, they could still take it out. However, this kind of investment was meaningless. If she could see this, how could Lu Yi, who was on Purple Jade Island, not see it? However, since the other party had made this proposal, he had no choice but to agree. Lu Yi nodded. "Of course I know. However, we can't just sit by and watch Wei Po be captured. As long as there's a slight possibility, we have to try our best. Senior sister, don't worry. If they really dare to go back on their words, we'll take the 1 billion spirit jades today. We'll definitely get back 10 times more in the future." Luan Xiao naturally trusted Lu Yi unconditionally. She immediately nodded and said, "Okay." After saying that, she turned and left. After a while, Luan Xiao returned with a large pile of storage rings. She handed them to Lu Yi and said, "The spirit jades aren't enough for 1 billion spirit jades. I gathered some materials to make up for it. The total value is definitely more than 1 billion spirit jades." Lu Yi nodded and immediately left the three-world island with these storage rings. He rushed toward Purple Jade. Half a day later, on Purple Jade Island, Lu Ye's clone looked at Hu Guang. "The spirit jades have been gathered. Please open the formation. I need to go out and receive them." End of this chapter. Chapter 1846. Purple Jade Island's Great Formation isolated the island from the outside, so even if Lu Yi wanted to use Void Spirit runes to transport those storage rings, he couldn't do it. Taking a step back, even without the Great Formation's isolation, the Precious Blood clone didn't have the means to activate the Talent Tree's power, so it wouldn't be easy to construct a Void Spirit rune. The best way was to go directly to the rescue. Hearing this, Hu Guang just smiled faintly. "Why don't you have someone send the spirit jades in?" He was obviously afraid that Lu Yi would take the opportunity to escape. Of course, Lu Yi wouldn't agree. He didn't have any scruples about the Precious Blood clone coming to Purple Jade Island, but his main body couldn't enter personally. If others sealed the Great Formation, he would become a turtle in a jar. So, he said, "Don't worry, fellow Taoist. Since I'm here, I won't leave. I'll return after receiving the spirit jades." Hu Guang still shook his head. No. Lu Yi blinked and said, "In that case, why don't you go personally?" If Hu Guang could leave Purple Jade and meet his main body, then his main body could subdue him. Although Hu Guang was at the late stage of Yu Yao, Lu Yi didn't take him seriously. At that time, Zi Xian would have Wei Po, and he would have Hu Guang. Everyone would have chips in hand, so things would be easy. Hu Guang stared deeply at Lu Yi, smiled and nodded. "But thank you." Lu Yi nodded expressionlessly. Hu Guang turned around and said, "Junior Martial Brother Hu, Junior Martial Sister Bao, come with me." Opposite Lu Yi, at the seats next to Yuan Cheng, a young man and a vigorous woman stood up. Then, the three figures rushed out of the island together. Lu Yi picked up his wine cup and sipped lightly, his expression calm. Old Tang was right. On the entire Purple Jade Island, Hu Guang was the most scheming person. It was said that foxes were suspicious by nature, and it was true. If it were anyone else, no matter who stood in Hu Guang's position, they wouldn't think too much about going out to receive the spirit jades. However, this guy actually dragged 2 companions with him. After all, the location of the rescue was just outside Purple Jade Island. This Yu Yao of the monster clan was too cautious. In a one-on-one battle, Lu Yi was confident that he could take down Hu Guang, but in a 1-on-3 battle, he wasn't so sure. At that time, if he acted rashly and failed, it would only make Wei Padai even faster. Outside the Purple Jade Island, Hu Guang and the other two appeared. Lu Ye's original body had already put away the mountain pan saber and activated the simulated Might and the Thousand Faces spirit inscriptions to change his aura and appearance. After exchanging glances with Hu Guang, Lin Fan's true self handed the storage rings over to Hu Guang, then turned and left. Watching Lu Ye's figure disappear, Junior Brother Hu spoke up, "Senior Brother, you can take him down." Hu Guang shook his head. Outside the island, once the battle starts, it's hard to conceal the aftermath. If we can't take him down immediately, the guests on the island will notice. We already have enough bargaining chips in our hands, so there's no need to complicate matters. Junior Marshal Sister Bao giggled and said, "Senior Marshal Brother's plan is to attack the Three-Realm Island and also to stand on the side of justice, lest others mention it later and say that Purple Jade Island is bullying the weak." Hu Guang was gratified and said, "That's true." He weighed the storage rings in his hand and said, "This is an unexpected gain. The Three-Realm Island is accumulating wealth at an astonishing speed. It's only been a few years, but they've already accumulated so many spirit jades." Junior Marshal Brother Hu said, "When we take down the Three-Realm Island, this profit will be ours." "Only half of it." Hu Guang shook his head. Junior Marshal Brother Hu and Junior Marshal Sister Bao immediately understood. The other half would definitely be given to Yuan Du. After all, there would be another force taking over the Three-Realm Island, and this force would be appointed by Yuan Du. Let's go. Hu Guang turned and rushed towards Purple Jade, followed by Junior Marshal Brother Hu and Junior Marshal Sister Bao. A moment later, Hu Guang and the other two returned. Lu Yi looked up and saw that their hands were empty. He narrowed his eyes slightly. "How was it?" Lionheart, who was sitting at the head of the table, asked. Hu Guang spread out his hands. "I didn't see anyone at all." He looked at Lu Yi and asked, "Are you sure that someone from your island delivered the spirit jades?" Lu Yi looked at him expressionlessly. "Is this how Purple Jade does things?" Those storage rings were personally handed over by his original body to Hu Guang, but in the blink of an eye, the other party refused to admit it. He really didn't expect that such a large force would be so unsightly. However, this also showed that the other party was determined to go against the Three-Realm Island. Hu Guang looked at him with a smile. "What do you mean by that?" Lionheart, who was sitting at the head of the table, was furious. He slapped the armrest of his chair and scolded, "Fellow Taoist, I, Purple Jade, have already given enough face to the Three-Realm Island. 5 constellations were killed, and you only asked for 1 billion spirit jades as compensation. Yet you still want to play with us like this. Do you have any respect for Purple Jade?" Hu Guang's smile disappeared and he said coldly, "Since the Three-Realm Island isn't willing to compensate, then let's go to war. Since ancient times, a life for a life is the right thing to do." Among the guests someone shouted, "That's right, a life for a life." Lu Yi suddenly turned to look at the person who spoke. He looked familiar and vaguely felt that he had seen him somewhere before. After thinking carefully, he finally remembered who this person was. Giant Blade Island, Zhao Yunqi. During the war against the Yu, the Giant Blade Island had also participated. They took advantage of the fact that the Three-Realm Island was undefended and secretly occupied it. However, before they could even sit down, they heard that the Yu had been defeated. They panicked and quickly retreated. After the Three-Realm Island's cultivators occupied the Yu, Lu Yi led his troops to camp at the entrance of the Giant Blade Island. He acted as if he was going to attack the Giant Blade Island. At that time, Zhao Yunqi was terrified. In the end, they had to compensate the Three-Realm Island with tens of millions of spirit jades before the Three-Realm Island's cultivators retreated. Zhao Yunqi had always been brooding over the matter of the past. They clearly didn't do anything. All they did was break an empty shell formation of the Three-Realm Island, and they were swindled of tens of millions of spirit jades. Today, there was a rare opportunity, and he excitedly agreed. He felt very happy. When he met Lu Ye's gaze, Zhao Yunqi couldn't help but shrink back. However, he quickly straightened his back because he felt that Lu Yi wouldn't live past today. If Purple Jade wanted to attack the Three-Realm Island, how could the Three-Realm Island stop her? That's right, a life for a life. Lionheart coldly snorted and raised his hand to grab the bamboo bed. His huge palm covered it, and with a squeeze, the bamboo bed shattered. Wei Pa bled from his nose and mouth, but because of the restriction on his body, he couldn't speak or move. His face was filled with pain. Lu Yi hurriedly looked at Lionheart, and in the next instant his pupils shrank. Lionheart had already opened his mouth and directly threw Wei Pa into his mouth. He bit down hard, causing blood to spurt out of his mouth. His expression was terrifying as he stared at Lu Yi while chewing, and with a sinister smile, he shouted, "Purple Jade's monster cultivators, flatten the three-realm island." Yes. Hu Guang and the other cultivators obeyed and immediately turned to look at Lu Yi with unfriendly expressions. Powerful divine senses firmly locked onto him. Hu Guang said, "Lu Yi, you've ruined my Purple Jade's blood sacrifice ceremony. You'll be today's sacrifice." Lu Ye's gaze swept across the Yu Yao monster cultivators before suddenly looking at Yuan Cheng, who was looking at him with a smug smile. Yuan Cheng's heart skipped a beat as he instinctively felt that something was wrong. But before he could react, Lu Yi had already moved. His figure flashed out like a bolt of lightning, and when he unsheathed the long saber at his waist, a dazzling saber light flashed. "You dare!" Hu Guang shouted in shock. He never thought that Lu Yi would actually attack Yuan Cheng. If Yuan Cheng died on Purple Jade Island, they wouldn't be able to explain it to Yuan Du. He immediately moved to stop him, and the other Yu Yao monster cultivators also moved. Even Lionheart, who was sitting upright, raised a palm and slapped towards Lu Yi. At this moment, at least 7 or 8 Yu Yao monsters attacked together. Under such circumstances, even if the precious blood clone could display the full strength of the main body for a short time, it would still be difficult for him to dodge. A muffled groan rang out and blood splattered. Lu Ye's chest and back were caved in, and even his left leg was cut off. Enduring this round of attacks, Lu Yi brazenly broke out of the encirclement. His body, which seemed to be pouncing towards Yuan Cheng, suddenly turned and pounced towards his junior brother who was not far away from Yuan Cheng. Seeing Lu Ye's miserable appearance, junior brother who wasn't afraid at all. He stretched out his hand like a claw towards Lu Ye's heart. Lu Yi raised his saber to slash, but his junior sister Bao easily blocked him. With a Puchi, junior brother whose large hand stabbed into Lu Ye's chest. He immediately revealed a sinister smile and squeezed hard, trying to crush Lu Ye's heart. But soon, a puzzled expression appeared on his face because he couldn't feel anything. It was as if Lu Ye's chest didn't have a heart at all. This puzzled him. When he looked up, he saw Lu Ye's cold expression and an icy voice in his ear. "A life for a life. A debt of blood must be paid in blood." As his voice fell, Lu Yi threw away the long saber in his hand and grabbed junior brother whose arms. Seeing the determination in Lu Ye's eyes, junior brother who was startled and suddenly realized one thing. Lu Ye's target had never been Yuan Cheng, but him. After all, Yuan Cheng was backed by Yuan Du. Killing Yuan Cheng here today would only bring disaster to Three World Island, so Lu Yi naturally wouldn't do such a thing. With Lu Yi grabbing his arms, junior brother who panicked. Although he didn't know what Lu Yi intended to do, he could clearly sense a violent aura surging from Lu Ye's body. Immediately after, a red light flashed in front of him and an incomparably violent shockwave swept out in all directions. The several monster race Yu Yao who had come to support junior brother who were knocked off balance and staggered. Lionheart's eyes widened in that instant, his face filled with astonishment. He clearly saw that after Lu Yi spoke those words, Lu Ye's entire body suddenly exploded. Even Lionheart felt his heart palpitate. Many cries of alarm rang out and the banquet hall fell into chaos. Yuan Cheng, who wasn't far from junior brother who was sent flying by the shockwave, and the protective magic artifact covering his body quickly dimmed. Fortunately, he had summoned a magic artifact to protect himself at the critical moment. Otherwise, just the shockwave alone would have been enough to seriously injure him. When he finally steadied himself and looked around again, he couldn't help but feel his scalp go numb. Lu Yi, who he hated bitterly, was nowhere to be seen. Obviously he was dead, and his junior brother whose body was also in tatters. Half of his body was missing, and the remaining half was riddled with holes. He stood in a daze, feeling his vitality rapidly fading. He instinctively looked at Lionheart and called out in a muffled voice, "Save me!" Chapter 1847. Hu Guang flew over to Junior Marshall Brother Hu like a gust of wind and placed him on the ground. He then took out a top-grade healing pill and stuffed it into Junior Marshall Brother Hu's mouth. "Relax, hurry up and refine the pill." Junior Marshall Brother Hu chuckled bitterly. He showed no signs of refining the pill. He had already cultivated to the late-stage Yu-Yao realm, so he naturally knew what kind of injuries could be fatal. Even though he was a monster with a powerful physique and abundant blood essence, there was no way he could survive such a severe injury unless he had the legendary miracle medicine that could bring the dead back to life. His cry for help just now was only an instinctive fear of death. Cough. Junior Marshall Brother Hu spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with chunks of his internal organs. "I've embarrassed Zixian." It was supposed to be a foolproof plan, but one of them had been forcibly killed. If news of this were to spread, they would definitely become a laughingstock. His death would also diminish their upcoming victory. It's not like that. Hu Guang's heart was bleeding. Although they weren't of the same race, they were both monsters. He had watched Junior Marshall Brother Hu grow up, and they were as close as father and son. Now that Junior Marshall Brother Hu was in such a pitiful state, and he was the one who had led the plan, he felt both guilty and pained. How could this be? Junior Marshall's sister Bao stood to the side. Even someone as powerful as Yu Yao was shocked by this scene. She was even more terrified. If Lu Yi had targeted her just now, then the one lying on the ground right now wouldn't be Junior Marshall Brother Hu, but her. Blood explosion technique. Lionheart, who had already stood up from the main seat, gritted his teeth and yelled with a dark expression, "Blood explosion technique." He was very experienced and knowledgeable, so he could naturally tell that Lu Yi had used a Blood Dao secret technique, the blood explosion technique. This was a secret technique that belonged to the Blood Tribe. It was a secret technique that Blood Tribe members used to perish together with their enemies in desperate situations. However, what he couldn't understand was how a mid-stage Yu-Yao realm cultivator could unleash such a powerful blood explosion technique. Junior Marshall Brother Hu's cultivation base was one level higher than Lu Ye's, and his monster physique was extremely powerful. Even if he had been the first to bear the brunt of the attack, this shouldn't have been the result. However, the truth was right in front of him. Junior Marshall Brother Hu was beyond saving. This was completely illogical. Even a true Blood Tribe member with a mid-stage Yu-Yao realm cultivator shouldn't be able to unleash such terrifying destructive power. Haha. A loud laugh rang out, adding a hint of strangeness to the bleak atmosphere. The group of Yu-Yao cultivators turned around angrily, wanting to see just who was laughing so arrogantly. In the end, it turned out to be the 5 Color Islands by Fellow Taoist by Dang. "Why are you laughing?" Lionheart looked at him coldly with a hint of questioning in his eyes. Today's matter was not complete. Junior Brother Tiger's death could no longer be reversed, and this filled his heart with anger. He looked at Xuan Xiu with eyes filled with cold killing intent. After watching a good show, my heart was very happy, so I laughed. Lao Ai held a wine jar and looked back at Lionheart without a change in expression. The 2 great island masters of the 2 spiritual islands looked at each other from afar. The atmosphere was tense. "Senior brother," Hu Guang softly called out and then slowly shook his head. Lionheart also knew that Bai and was not to be trifled with. Zixian would not offend Rainbow Island over such a trivial matter. His eyes flashed and his killing intent disappeared. He said indifferently, "I heard that fellow Taoist has a good relationship with Lu Yi? What does it have to do with you?" Lao Ai replied rudely and slowly stood up. "There's no show to watch, right? If there's no show, then I'm leaving." Carrying a jar of wine, he turned and rushed out of the island. Along the way, he laughed wildly, making the group of Moon Jade Islands Yao cultivators tremble in anger. Soon, Xuan Xiu arrived in front of the island's protective formation. He rudely ordered the Purple Jade Islands Yao cultivators stationed here, activate the formation. The Purple Jade Islands Yao cultivators recognized Xuan Xiu, so naturally, they would not make things difficult for him. They immediately activated the formation, and Xuan Xiu rushed out. A figure flew in front of him. Xuan Xiu glanced at him and did not recognize him, so he did not pay much attention to him. However, he was sure that this cultivator should be a Purple Jade Island's Yao cultivator because he shouted while flying, "Senior brothers, please close the formation and let me in." They brushed past each other. Xuan Xiu suddenly turned around and glanced at the star constellation realm Yao cultivator. He vaguely felt that something was strange. As for what exactly was strange, he could not tell. It was just an instinctive feeling. However, it had nothing to do with him in the end. He had watched a great show today, and it was very interesting. Moreover, he had already been warned by Lu Yi that the one who died in battle was only a clone of Lu Yi. Lu Ye's true body was still hiding somewhere safe. The highlight of this great show had not been revealed yet. If the Purple Jade Island's Yao cultivator knew the truth, he would definitely be very sad because this undoubtedly meant that junior brother who had died in vain. When he thought of this, Xuan Xiu was even more delighted. He was secretly impressed. Lu Yi was indeed an extraordinary figure. However, it was not strange. How could someone who could save him from the filth tribe be ordinary? Back in the Jade Conch Galaxy, he had personally experienced Lu Ye's strength. At that time, Lu Yi was only at the early stage of Moon Jade Island. Now that Lu Ye's cultivation base had advanced, his strength could only be stronger. Inside the formation, the Yao cultivator entered Purple Jade Island. The Yao cultivators guarding here recognized him, and one of them said, "Junior brother Ho Fei, how is the three-world island?" Ho Fei said, "It's the same as before. How is the situation here?" The Yao cultivator who spoke glanced in the direction of the banquet. "I don't know the exact situation, but it must have been a fight. There were very strong shockwaves just now, and Xuan Xiu from the Five-Color Island has left early." Ho Fei pondered, "Then the army should be deployed soon. Senior brothers, please continue with your work. I'll go prepare first." After saying this, he walked towards the island. At the banquet, junior brother who had already died. Before he died, he only left behind a few words: "Flatten the three-world island." This was Zi Xian's ultimate goal. Lu Yi had died in Zi Xian's hands. It could be said that the greatest threat had been eliminated. Because according to the information they had gathered, although Lu Ye's cultivation base was not high, he was very strong. Back then, Yu Huan was at the late stage of Moon Jade Island, but she was chased into a corner by him. This was also the reason why Hu Guangyo had deployed today. Their purpose was to invite the enemy into their trap. If Lu Yi came, no matter what he did, he would not be able to leave alive. If he did not come, Zi Xian would not lose anything. Furthermore, they could use Wei Pe, who was captured alive, as an excuse to attack. As a top force, Zi Xian had to consider their reputation when doing things on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. If they attacked a high-class spiritual island for no reason, it would inevitably cause other similar forces to fear and panic Zi Xian. If Zi Xian could attack the three-world island for no reason today, they could attack other spiritual islands in the future. With a reputation, it would be different. Today's banquet had so many guests, and they were all island masters of the various spiritual islands. Naturally, they would spread the word that it was the three-world islands cultivators who killed the Purple Jade cultivators first, and Zi Xian's side retaliated. They had the moral high ground. As for whether the three-world islands cultivators killed the Purple Jade cultivators, it did not matter if they did in the past, but today they did. Under everyone's watchful eyes, junior brother who died under Lu Ye's blood explosion technique. This was a hatred that would not rest until one of them was dead. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Lionheart's angry voice resounded throughout the Purple Jade Island. "Attack the three-world island. Within 3 days, I want the entire three-world island to be wiped out." Upon receiving the order, all the demon cultivators were filled with murderous intent. The Purple Jade cultivators had been waiting for this day for a year. All kinds of secret arrangements had already been made. Hence, under Lionheart's order, all the demon cultivators on the Purple Jade Island moved instantly. At the banquet, Hu Guang bowed to all the guests. "Today's incident has frightened all of you. I will visit you again in the future to apologize." The guests naturally knew what Huguang meant. They returned the greeting and left. Zixian was going to attack the three-world island. Of course, it was not suitable for them to stay. After watching the guests leave, Huguang glanced at the remains of Junior Brother Hu with a sorrowful gaze. He ordered, "Take Junior Brother Hu away and settle him down." Immediately, a demon cultivator who was on good terms with Junior Brother Hu walked out. He bent down, picked up Junior Brother Hu's body, and left quickly. Yuan Cheng had not left yet. He sighed and looked at Huguang. "My condolences." Huguang remained silent and only nodded. On the other side, the demon cultivator Yu Yao carrying Junior Brother Hu's body rushed towards Junior Brother Hu's sleeping quarters. Suddenly, he noticed a figure approaching from the corner of his eye. He turned his head and immediately recognized the Yao cultivator. He was the one who had been sent to the three-world island to monitor Lu Ye's movements. His name was Ho Fei, and he was the one who had sent the news of Lu Ye's return from the three-world island. He immediately shouted, "Ho Fei, what are you doing running around instead of gathering?" Ho Fei hurriedly said, "Lord Red Elephant, I have something to report. It's about the three-world island." Red Elephant immediately stopped and asked in a low voice, "What is it?" After speaking, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He looked at the long saber in Ho Fei's hand and asked, "When did you use a saber?" He had some understanding of Ho Fei. This guy walked the path of ghost cultivators. It was somewhat strange that he suddenly carried a long saber. "Spoils of war," Ho Fei casually replied. "It's a good saber. Lord Red Elephant, why don't you take a look?" Red Elephant felt that Ho Fei was a bit messy today. He clearly said that he had something to report, yet he inexplicably asked him to look at the saber. Before he could refuse, the long saber at Ho Fei's waist had already been unsheathed. Red Elephant's eyes widened. In that instant, Ho Fei's face rapidly distorted. Even his cultivation, which was originally at the late stage of the constellation realm, suddenly surged, revealing the strength of the middle stage of the Yu Yao realm. A bright saber light flashed past. Red Elephant cried out in alarm and staggered back. He felt a pain in his chest. Red Elephant did not need to look to know that he was injured. There was definitely a wound on his chest that was so deep that his bones could be seen. This was all thanks to him tossing Junior Brother Hu's body out to block the attack at the critical moment. Although Junior Brother Hu was dead and only his body was left, his body was still tough. Ho Fei's saber not only severed Junior Brother Hu's body, but also injured him. It was clear how fierce the attack was. End of chapter. Chapter 1848. On Purple Jade Island, Red Elephant was suddenly attacked. He didn't have time to marvel at the opponent's strength. When he saw the face in front of him, he suddenly looked like he had seen a ghost. Lu Yi. Just now, Ho Fei had turned into the third island master of Three World Island who had made a scene at the banquet and killed Junior Brother Tiger with the blood explosion technique. Red Elephant almost thought that he was seeing things. By the time he finished speaking, Lu Ye's figure had already disappeared. Red Elephant immediately let out an angry roar. Demonic chi surged around his body, and he instinctively swung his head to the side. With this violent swing, his trunk suddenly lengthened, turning into a bronze elephant trunk that bombarded the void. Lu Ye's figure just happened to appear in this position, and the long saber in his hand slashed down, splashing blood. Red Elephant screamed in pain and staggered back. Lu Yi showed a dissatisfied look. Although the precious blood doppelganger could exert all the strength of his original body in a short time, the long saber in his hand was not suitable. This long saber was a magic weapon, and its shape was almost the same as the Pan Shan saber. However, it was still an unfamiliar long saber, and it was not so easy to use. Moreover, its quality was very different from the Pan Shan saber. In terms of sharpness, this long saber was far inferior to the Pan Shan saber. If his original body was here with the Pan Shan saber, the first attack just now could at least seriously injure or even kill Red Elephant. However, at this moment, the two attacks only left 2 wounds on the opponent. His figure swayed and he swept away, disappearing again. For the first time, Red Elephant personally experienced the strangeness of the sweep technique. He had no time to react, and when he realized that Lu Ye's figure had disappeared, a fierce aura attacked from the side. He instinctively urged the monster Qi to protect his body and at the same time blocked with his arm. His hands suddenly became lighter, and when Red Elephant came back to his senses, he was shocked to find that his arm had been cut off. He caught a glimpse of the enemy's figure in the corner of his vision, but when he turned his head to look, he couldn't see the enemy at all. When he turned his head again, he didn't know when the powerful enemy, who was as swift as the wind, was standing not far in front of him. Red Elephant's eyes were filled with horror, and he only felt an unprecedented crisis enveloping his body and mind, making him feel cold all over. As far as his eyes could see, Lu Ye's saber power had already risen. Vaguely, the Red Elephant seemed to hear the angry roar of a beast. In a daze, he even saw a bloody mouth with dense fangs biting down on his head. The saber light was annihilated. The Red Elephant stood in midair, frozen and motionless. His face was filled with shock. Even though he knew that Yu Yao from the Three-World Island was very strong, he hadn't expected her to be this strong. They were both at the middle stage of the Moonjade Realm, and he was already halfway to the late stage of the Moonjade Realm. He had never met a worthy opponent at this level before. Yet, under his opponent's ferocious attacks, he hadn't even been able to block 3 strikes. If he wasn't mistaken, the opponent's last saber strike, which had bared its fangs, should have originated from a certain Demon Clan expert. Blood splattered everywhere as the Red Elephant's body fell downwards, its vitality rapidly dissipating. At this moment, several powerful auras flew over. Lu Yi turned his head and saw Lionheart and the other Demon Clan Yu Yao in the distance. The commotion had obviously alarmed them, and they hurried over to investigate the situation. From afar, they saw the scene of the Red Elephant's tragic death. The Demon Clan Yu Yao couldn't help but fly into a rage. They hadn't even recovered from the grief of their junior brother Tiger's tragic death, and now the Red Elephant had been killed as well. When they saw Lu Ye's face again, they all revealed looks of confusion. Not long ago, Lu Yi had clearly used the blood explosion technique in front of them and died without leaving behind a corpse. How had he suddenly come back to life? And why was he attacking the Red Elephant here? There was no time to think. First, it was their junior brother Tiger. Now, it was the Red Elephant. The Demon Clan Yu Yao's hatred for Lu Yi soared to the heavens. Lionheart roared, "Die!" Lionheart's voice seemed to have activated some kind of secret technique. The originally invisible sound waves transformed into a shockwave visible to the naked eye, sweeping out in all directions. The Demon Clan Yu Yao near him staggered, their speed greatly reduced. The precious blood clone was also distorted by the shockwave, almost reverting to its original form. Fortunately, it managed to hold on in the end. Ignoring Lionheart, the precious blood clone turned around and stared at the Demon Clan cultivators watching from afar. The battle that had erupted earlier not only attracted Lionheart and the other Demon Clan Yu Yao cultivators, but also the other Demon Clan Yu Yao cultivators in the vicinity. These Demon Clan Yu Yao cultivators were in the midst of gathering. When they sensed something amiss, they rushed over to investigate. Bloody light burst forth from the precious blood clone's body. He executed the blood escape technique and transformed into a streak of red light. In the blink of an eye, he charged into the midst of the Demon Clan Yu Yao cultivators. Saber light flashed. It was a massacre. How could the Demon Clan Yu Yao cultivators withstand Lu Ye's massacre? Everywhere he passed, there was a rain of blood. Lionheart's eyes turned red as he watched. He roared, "Everyone disperse." But he didn't expect Lu Yi to be so despicable. He didn't even bother to meet the Demon Clan Yu Yao cultivators. Instead, he went to find trouble with the Demon Clan Yu Yao cultivators. The Demon Clan Yu Yao cultivators didn't need Lionheart's order. When they sensed that something was wrong, they immediately scattered and fled in all directions. Those who were lucky managed to escape, while those who were unlucky could only die on the spot. The precious blood clone slaughtered his way through the Demon Clan Yu Yao cultivators, creating a death line that stretched for dozens of miles on Purple Jade Island. Lionheart and the other Demon Clan Yu Yao cultivators finally arrived. They worked together to surround the precious blood clone, their eyes almost spitting fire as they glared at him. The doppelganger knew that he couldn't escape. Moreover, the high-intensity battle had weakened the doppelganger's strength. Therefore, he wanted to repeat the same trick, which was to find Yu Yao of the Demon Clan and activate the blood explosion technique. However, Lionheart and the others had already suffered a loss. How could they give the precious blood clone a chance to display his strength again? All the Demon Clan Yu Yao cultivators who saw Lu Yi charging over quickly avoided him and only engaged him in a fight. After fighting like this for the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the precious blood clone's strength became weaker and weaker. Finally, Lionheart found an opportunity and killed him with a punch. After the great battle, the Demon Clan Yu Yao cultivators didn't feel the joy of killing a powerful enemy. Instead, their expressions were solemn. Not to mention the death of Hong Xiang. Just in that short moment, as many as 200 constellation cultivators had died in Lu Ye's hands. This was definitely a loss that Zhixian Island had never experienced before. With Zhixian's reputation, even if a constellation cultivator went out, very few people would dare to cause trouble, let alone lose so many cultivators at once. A clone! Hu Guang exclaimed in surprise when he saw that something was wrong. Previously, Lu Yi used the blood explosion technique and perished together with junior martial brother Hu. They thought that Lu Yi was dead, but in the blink of an eye, another Lu Yi appeared on the island and killed Red Elephant while they were unprepared. When Lu Yi died, the situation was also strange. There was no corpse left behind, only a pool of blood. This was obviously not the scene of a normal body of flesh and blood. It was undoubtedly a clone. In other words, Lu Yi had used the strength of 2 clones to kill 2 Yu Yao cultivators and 200 lunar mansions of Purple Jade Island. He had even turned the entire Purple Jade Island upside down. This was a great humiliation to the Purple Jade cultivators who were used to being high and mighty. How did he get in? A Yu Yao cultivator asked. Even if the other party was a clone, Purple Jade Island wasn't a place where one could enter as they pleased. There were Demon Clan Yu Yao cultivators guarding every corner of the island, so no one could sneak in without being noticed. But now, the truth was that the other party had really snuck in without them noticing. This was inconceivable. Moreover, what made them feel even more uneasy was it really only a clone that had snuck in? Across the starry sky, there were many types of cloning techniques. Many cultivators cultivated cloning techniques, and some cloning techniques could indeed pass off as genuine. However, cloning was not something that could be casually cultivated. It required a long time of polishing and a lot of effort. 3 World Islands Lu Yi had already lost 2 clones. Logically speaking, it was impossible for him to have more clones. After all, how could a mid-stage Yu Yao have so much time and effort to cultivate clones? Those who could do such things were generally cultivators with no hope of reaching the upper stage. They relied on clone techniques to increase their own combat strength. But there was always a possibility, especially since this enemy had already displayed an extremely powerful strength. Split into groups of 2 and search the island thoroughly. If you discover anything unusual, immediately alert us. Lionheart only hesitated for a moment before issuing the order. Although he couldn't wait to send troops to 3 World Island, if the island's crisis wasn't resolved, the people would definitely panic. Thus, the matter of sending troops to 3 World Island had to be delayed. They had to deal with the island's hidden dangers first. Lionheart was shocked. He realized that this was most likely Lu Ye's goal. He wanted to use this method to put Purple Jade in danger. Only then would he be able to resolve the crisis that 3 World Island was about to face. But in this way, Lionheart was even more determined to send troops to 3 World Island because the other party was afraid. What the other party was afraid of was undoubtedly what the island needed to do. Yu Yao, who was still alive, immediately split into groups of 2. Her powerful divine perception scanned every corner of the island. Even Lionheart joined in the search. After a round of searching, they found nothing. This undoubtedly meant that only 1 clone of the enemy had snuck in. The Purple Jade Beast cultivators regrouped. After half a day of turmoil, the spiritual island's great formation was activated. Warships sailed out from Z Jade. Most of them were Tiger Shark warships. These small warships that only required a few people to pilot were very popular on the Vientiane Sea. However, Jade's army was strong and powerful. After tens of thousands of years of accumulation, they didn't only have tiger shark warships. They also sent out a few large warships. There was even a huge central warship. Just the central warship alone could accommodate thousands of beast cultivators. With such a huge warship, no spiritual island below the top-grade spiritual island on the Vientiane Sea's Great Formation could withstand the attack of this warship. It could be said that as long as Jade's beast cultivators drove this warship to Three World Island, victory would be decided. With the accumulation of less than 10 years of accumulation on Three World Island, the Great Formation would definitely not be able to withstand the attack of this warship. In order to decide the outcome of this battle, Jade mobilized a total of 4,000 cultivators. The leader was undoubtedly Hu Guang. Other than him, there was also junior sister Bao Yuyu, and Yu Yao and Ape Che. Jade's fleet was filled with murderous intent. End of chapter. Chapter 1849. The entire Purple Jade Island only had slightly more than 5,000 Yao cultivators. Now that the army had been deployed, only 1,000 Yao cultivators were left to guard the island. The first island master, Lionheart, was personally overseeing the island. In fact, if not for the fact that he was worried that Lu Yi still had clones hiding on the island, Lionheart would not have stayed behind. With the strength of Purple Jade Island's defensive formation, no force in the entire 10,000 manifestations sea could shake it. Therefore, even without Yu Yao guarding the island, there was no risk of it being breached. After a thorough search, Lionheart did not find any more traces of Lu Ye's clones. However, there were some things that had to be taken care of. For safety's sake, Lionheart decided to stay behind. This was because Purple Jade Island had already dispatched troops to Three World Island. The battle for Spiritual Island had officially begun. Even if there were other Yao Yao from the Demon Clan on Purple Jade Island other than him, during the battle for Spiritual Island, these unregistered Yao Yao would not be able to contribute. In other words, during the battle for Spiritual Island, even if Lu Yi killed Yao cultivators in front of them, all they could do was watch. If they showed any signs of interfering, Lu Yi could ask Sunshine to arbitrate, just like what Yu Huan did. Once that happened, Vientiane Sunshine would definitely descend to uphold the rules. Like most spiritual islands, Purple Jade Island had a total of 5 registered Yu Yao. They were Lionheart, Hu Guang, Bao Yuyu, Yuan Che, and the dead junior brother Hu. Now that junior brother Hu was dead, Lionheart had to guard the island. The only Yu Yao they could mobilize were Hu Guang and the other 2. They were very clear about the overall strength of Three World Island. Although Three World Island also had 5 Yu Yao, their military strength was far inferior to theirs. In addition, in order to conquer Three World Island, Purple Jade had even brought out a central warship that could accommodate 1,000 people. It could be said that they were determined to win. Moreover, Lu Yi had already lost 2 clones. He would definitely suffer a backlash and his strength would be greatly reduced. Therefore, the only ones they really needed to deal with were the 4 Yu Yao. Coming from a top force like Purple Jade, they actually looked down on the Yu Yao of a new force like Three World Island. The strength of a cultivator was not directly determined by their cultivation level. The environment they were born in, the process they grew up in, battle experience, and even their wealth were all factors that affected their strength. Purple Jade's deployment of troops was spectacular. Such a huge commotion was quickly discovered by the cultivators of the 10,000 manifestations sea. A top-notch spiritual island sending out troops was something that had never happened in the Vientiane Sea for the past 10,000 years. In a split second, all kinds of news spread rapidly and attracted the attention of countless cultivators in a very short period of time. Everyone wanted to know which force Zixian was targeting this time. Soon, they knew which force Zixian was targeting. It was the newly rising Three World Island. Zixian had no intention of hiding her intentions when she sent out her troops. In addition, the island masters of the spiritual islands had witnessed the unimaginable change of events with their own eyes during the banquet. Under their intentional or unintentional dissemination, Zixian's intentions were quickly exposed to the world. The Three World Island again. One had to know that the Three World Islands' forceful invasion of the Baiue had caused a huge commotion. In that battle, the Three World Island had used an extremely shocking speed to conquer a high-grade spirit island that had been occupied for 800 years. As a result, the Baiue and Yu Yao armies had been completely annihilated, and countless star constellations had died. From then on, the Three World Islands' reputation spread. This was because even though there had been high-grade spirit islands that had been conquered before, it had never been done so quickly. There had also never been such a huge disparity in casualties. It was said that in that battle, the Three World Islands cultivators had killed many enemies, but they had not suffered any casualties. It was a miracle. After this battle, countless spiritual islands used this battle as a research example. They wanted to know how the Three World Island had done it. They wanted to learn from the mistakes of the past and learn from the mistakes of the future. Not to mention whether they would become enemies with the Three World Island in the future, just this battle alone was enough for them to invest their energy into researching. In the end, after researching and researching, they still could not figure out anything. This was because they could not understand how the Three World Islands cultivators had entered the Baiue on such a large scale before the Baiue's defensive formation was broken. Another hot topic of that battle was that when the third island master of the Three World Island, Lu Yi, was chasing after Yu Huan, he was obstructed by the Vientiane Sunshine's Yuan Du. In the end, after a series of words, Yuan Du was forced to personally kill Yu Huan. This was a great humiliation to Yuan Du. This was also the reason why no other forces had bowed to Yuan Du. Everyone knew that Yuan Du held a grudge against the Three World Island, but there was nothing he could do. Although he was the guardian of the sunshine, he had to follow the rules of the Vientiane Ocean the most. The Three World Island had been developing well in recent years. As one of the few commercial spiritual islands in the Vientiane Ocean, they earned a large amount of spiritual jades from renting out shops every year. However, how many years had it been? The Three World Island had stirred up trouble again, and this time, it was against a top force like the Purple Jade Island. According to the news, the Three World Islands Yu Yao first massacred the Purple Jade Island's demonic cultivators for no reason. Then, the third island master of the Three World Island, Lu Yi, used his clone to execute the blood explosion technique and kill the 4 island masters of the Purple Jade Island. This caused the Purple Jade Island to fly into a rage and launch an attack. The enormous fleet stretched out in all directions, casting a shadow that turned the Vientiane Ocean's waters pitch black. In the entire Vientiane Ocean, perhaps only other top spiritual islands occupied by other top forces had the right to resist the invasion of such a large army of cultivators. How could the Three World Island resist? The news quickly spread to the Three World Island's main island. The Three World Islands Yu Yao gathered in the meeting hall. Although her expression was grave, she was not flustered. Old Tang asked, "What's Lu Ye's plan?" Luan Xiao said, "Junior brother told us not to panic. He'll try his best to stop the Purple Jade fleet. If he really can't stop them, he'll tell us to abandon the island and leave before the fleet attacks." Tang Jun's face was full of anger. They've gone too far. Right now, the outside world was saying that the Three World Island had stirred up trouble first. It was said that the newly promoted Yu Yao of the Three World Island was rampant and had killed Purple Jade's Yao cultivators for no reason. Lu Yi even used his clone to activate the blood explosion art and killed the 4th island master. However, only a small number of people knew the truth. Moreover, Purple Jade did not mention a word about the 1 billion spiritual jades that the Three World Island had sent over. They've had their eyes on us for a long time. They've been waiting for a year. No matter what junior brother does, they'll still send their troops. Luan Xiao sighed. Lu Yi definitely knew that this would be the result, but Wei Po was captured alive. Even if he knew this would be the result, Lu Yi still went. He did his best to try and see if he could save Wei Po. Baichuan frowned. What will happen to the merchants on the island when the 2 islands are in conflict? Tang Jun said, "Don't worry. The Three World Island is a commercial spiritual island. The battle for the commercial spiritual island won't affect the merchants. Even if Purple Jade attacks, they'll only attack the areas where the cultivators are stationed. They won't disturb the merchants' locations." There was a precedent for this. Therefore, even though the news of Purple Jade attacking the Three-World Island had already spread here, the merchants on the island were not panicking. This was because the Three-World Island's greatest value was them. No one would offend them because of war. Tang Jun's spiritual talisman suddenly moved. He hurriedly checked it and revealed a gratified expression. The Four-Corner Island is considerate. What do you mean? He Baichuan looked at him. Tang Jun said, Kong Cheng, Zhang Tingyi, Gao Zhan, and Zhou Chuang have sent a joint message. They're prepared to reinforce our 2,000 constellations. The spiritual island that the Four-Corner Island was currently stationed on was the Bai Yu of the past. After the battle with the Yu, the Three-World Island had secretly handed over the Yu to the Four-Corner Island through an auction. Then, they sent people back to the Four-Corner Galaxy and brought back even more constellations. During the auction, the Three-World Island didn't take a single piece of spiritual jade from the Four-Corner Island. It was equivalent to giving it to them for free. Over the years, the Four-Corner Island had developed well. Now that they knew Purple Jade was attacking, they immediately responded. Moreover, this wasn't considered breaking the rules. This was because their reinforcements were constellations. As long as they could get the 2,000 constellations to defend the Three-World Island before Purple Jade's fleet arrived, they would be part of the Three-World Island's strength. The myriad phenomenon C's rules didn't restrict this. Before the two sides started fighting, they could each borrow troops from their allies. This was something that could be followed. Of course, if the war between the two sides officially started, no external forces would be allowed to interfere on the same battlefield. One had to know that even if the Four-Corner Galaxy sent more constellations over, the Four-Corner Island only had 3,000 people in total. The fact that Four-Corner Island had sent 2,000 reinforcements showed their sincerity. If it weren't for the rules, Yu Yao and the others would have rushed over. Luan Xiaoan nodded slightly as warmth flowed through her heart. As the saying went, a friend in need is a friend indeed. After pondering for a moment, she said, Send a message. Thank you for your kind intentions, but there's no need for reinforcements. Tell them that we won't defend the island and won't fight the enemy head-on. The Three-World Island was already prepared to evacuate the island at a moment's notice. After all, the disparity in military strength between them and the enemy was very obvious. If they defended the island, they would definitely suffer heavy casualties. Therefore, it was best to evacuate as soon as possible. Since they weren't going to defend the island, they naturally didn't need Four-Corner Island's reinforcements. Tang Jun nodded and immediately sent a message back. At this moment, Purple Jade's massive fleet was rapidly heading towards the Three-World Island. With their current speed, it would take less than a day to reach the Three-World Island. On the central warship, Hu Guang was personally overseeing it. On the other side of the large warships were Yuan Che and Bao Yuyu. The many Tiger Shark warships were spread out on either side. From a distance, this massive fleet looked like a terrifying beast flying towards them. Suddenly, Hu Guang, who was standing on the deck of the warship, raised his head and looked ahead. What entered his eyes was a tiny figure. That person was standing there quietly, alone. Lu Yi. After seeing this person's face, Hu Guang's eyes immediately turned red and he couldn't help but recall the scene of his junior brother whose tragic death. He immediately roared, "Kill him for me!" As soon as the order was given, the spirit arrays on the warship buzzed and energy surged. After a short period of time, a series of terrifying attacks shot towards Lu Yi. However, although this terrifying weapon used to besiege a city was incomparably ferocious, it ultimately lost its agility. Before the numerous attacks arrived, Lu Ye's figure flashed a few times as if he was taking a stroll in the park, and all the attacks hit empty air. End of chapter. Chapter 1850. Hu Guang's eyes widened as he looked at Lu Ye's original position, only to discover that he had already lost sight of him. He immediately felt uneasy. At that moment, he heard movement from the fleet's right flank. When he turned to look, his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Lu Yi had appeared there at some point, standing atop a Tiger Shark warship. He had unsheathed his saber and gripped the hilt with both hands. Magic power surged through his body as he viciously stabbed at the Tiger Shark warship. The mountain plate saber was already incomparably sharp, but after being enhanced with the divine edge spirit tattoo, it became even sharper. Even the tiger shark warship couldn't withstand such a stab. The saber cut through the warship like a knife through tofu. The saber drew back and slashed horizontally. In the blink of an eye, a hole had appeared in one of the tiger shark warships. The 5 Yao cultivators inside the warship didn't even have time to react to what was happening. They only felt their vision brighten, and when they looked up, they met Lu Ye's icy gaze. With a wave of his saber light shot out like a waterfall. Inside the tiger shark warship, blood splattered everywhere as all life was extinguished. Lu Yi leapt onto a nearby tiger shark warship and did the same thing. Hu Guang was stunned. Based on their brief interaction, he could tell that the third island master of Three World Island was a daring individual. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to brazenly kill Zixian and Yu Yao with his avatar. Anyone with even the slightest bit of sense wouldn't have done such a thing. But he never thought that this person's guts would be so big. Facing Zixian's entire fleet, he actually dared to come alone and cause trouble. This person, did he really not know how to spell the word death? What infuriated Hu Guang even more was that he had succeeded. 1 tiger shark warship and 5 Yao cultivators. Compared to the size of the fleet, the losses were negligible. However, there were some things that couldn't be measured by losses. Zixian had sent troops to attack Three World Island, but the single Yu Yao had come to cause trouble. How could the Yao cultivators tolerate this? Moreover, based on Lu Ye's efficiency, if they didn't stop him, their losses would only increase. If they really did cause too much damage, Zixian wouldn't be able to accept it even if they managed to conquer Three World Island. Zixian had mobilized 4,000 troops because she wanted to use her absolute advantage to sweep through Three World Island and avoid losses. "You're courting death!" Hu Guang roared angrily as he shot towards Lu Yi, at the same time sending out 2 orders with his divine sense. One order was for Ape Che and Bao Yuyu to attack Lu Yi together. The other order was for all the tiger shark warships to activate their defenses. His reaction was undoubtedly very fast, but even so, in this short period of time, Lu Yi destroyed another 3 tiger shark battleships. None of the Constellation Yao cultivators in the battleships were spared. All of them were killed. Hu Guang felt as if his heart was bleeding. This conflict between Zixian and Three World Island had been planned by Zixian, but from beginning to end, Zixian had only killed Wei Pe, who had just ascended to the Moon Jade realm. On the other hand, Three World Island had first killed Junior Brother, who then killed Red Elephant and the 200 lunar mansions. Now, they had even lost 3 tiger shark warships. In comparison, Zixian's losses were far too great, and the instigator of all of this was this fellow called Lu Yi. "Be careful of that saber of his. It's very sharp." Hu Guang hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Bao Yuyu and Ape Che as he charged towards Lu Yi. This was because he had personally witnessed a tiger shark battleship, which he had ordered to activate its defenses, being sliced apart by Lu Yi without being able to put up any resistance. The tiger shark battleships were so popular mainly because they were small and light. Several lunar mansions could control them, and they could unleash about the same level of strength as a Moon Jade. In other words, a tiger shark battleship that activated its defenses was equivalent to a Moon Jade activating her protective magic power. Even so, it still couldn't block that saber's attacks and was easily sliced apart. Yao cultivators' physiques were indeed powerful, but they couldn't afford to be careless in the face of such a sharp attack. Hu Guang and the other 2 Moon Jade were quite fast. As they spoke, they had already closed in on Lu Yi. However, Hu Guang was infuriated to see that Lu Yi, who seemed to be charging at them aggressively, had actually fled before they could reach him. It was obvious that he didn't want to fight them head-on. This was undoubtedly the best choice. He was fighting 1 against 3, and all 3 of them were late-stage Moon Jade. Retreating first was the safest choice. Although Hu Guang had expected this to happen, he still felt irritated when Lu Yi made such a choice. Just as he was hesitating about whether or not to pursue, Ape Che shouted, "Don't let him escape. His aura is a little weak." Hu Guang immediately sensed Lu Ye's aura carefully and discovered that it was just as Ape Che had said. Although Lu Yi appeared normal, He couldn't conceal his weak aura. Hu Guang immediately understood that the loss of his 2 clones must have backfired on Lu Ye's main body. In the cultivation world, there were many kinds of doppelganger techniques, but basically, once the doppelganger was destroyed, it would also have a great impact on the original body. Lu Yi had lost 2 doppelgangers to Zixian, so how could he be safe and sound? He was being secretive because he wanted to cover up the inconvenience of his own body. Hu Guang no longer hesitated and ordered the fleet to continue forward while continuing to pursue the 2 monster cultivators, closing the distance between them. This chase lasted for half an incense stick's worth of time, spanning nearly 10,000 kilometers. Seeing that the fleeing figure in front of him was about to enter his attack range, Hu Guang silently urged his strength, causing the phantom of 6 foxtails behind him to appear and sway wildly, distorting the surrounding space. This undoubtedly meant that he was going to use his full strength in this next attack. On the other side, Bao Yuyu and Ape Che also urged their strength, secretly accumulating strength, preparing to join forces with Hu Guang to deal a fatal blow to Lu Yi. With 3 late-stage Moon Jade cultivators joining forces, no one in the starry sky could stop them. The 3 of them were confident that they could severely injure or even kill Lu Yi. However, just as the 3 of them were about to attack, Lu Ye's fleeing figure suddenly stopped and turned his head to glance at them indifferently. In the next moment, a complex spirit pattern suddenly took shape beneath Lu Ye's feet. Seeing this, Hu Guang's heart skipped a beat. Although he didn't know what the spirit rune represented, he instinctively had a bad feeling about it. Without any hesitation, he launched a fierce attack, turning it into a fiery red attack that shot towards Lu Yi. At the same time, Bao Yuyu and Ape Che attacked simultaneously. A violent power enveloped the area where Lu Yi stood, making it impossible to see his figure. When the 3 monster cultivators rushed over, their expressions sank. Lu Yi had disappeared, but they didn't see any trace of a living being's death. Bao Yuyu's face was filled with unease as she muttered, "Is this also a clone?" If this was a clone, then where was Lu Ye's main body? In order to hunt down Lu Yi, the 3 Moon Jade cultivators had set out together, and there were no masters overseeing the fleet. Hu Guang shook his head and suddenly turned to look back, his expression changing drastically as he shouted, "Quickly retreat!" He had already realized the seriousness of the problem. Just now, no matter if it was Lu Ye's original body or avatar, there were no signs of him being killed. It was as if he had suddenly disappeared. Then, thinking of the strange spirit patterns that had suddenly appeared, Hu Guang immediately understood that Lu Yi had mastered a mysterious teleportation technique. Right now, he had no idea where he had teleported to. He had heard that there was a dwarf race talisman shop on the 3 Realms Island, so he might have used a teleportation talisman refined by the dwarf race. Hu Guang could only hope that Lu Yi wasn't too close to the fleet so the 3 of them could still retreat. This was because the dwarf race's teleportation talismans generally teleported people randomly and couldn't pinpoint their exact location. However, in the next moment, his hopes were dashed. The sound talisman suddenly began to vibrate, and not just once, but continuously. This undoubtedly meant that many messages were being sent to him. Hu Guang felt a chill run down his spine as he took out the sound talisman with trembling hands and probed it with his divine sense. At the same time, Bao Yuyu and Ape Che were also probing their own sound talismans. The former cried out in alarm, "Not good, Lu Yi is slaughtering the fleet." The most frightening thing had happened. This undoubtedly meant that after Lu Yi had teleported away, he had directly appeared in the fleet's vicinity. Hu Guang didn't know how he had done this, but he knew that this was definitely not a coincidence. The 3 Yao cultivators rushed toward the fleet with all their might, but they had chased after him too far. Even if they returned to defend themselves, they would need some time. The vast myriad sea was suddenly raining warships today. One after another, battered tiger shark warships spun and fell to the surface of the sea, sinking into the depths without even making a splash. Many cultivators passing by saw this shocking scene from afar, and they were all shocked to the extreme. This was because in their eyes, this was simply a massacre. A single person was massacring an entire fleet. From afar, compared to the enormous fleet, that figure was as tiny as an ant. However, It was precisely this tiny figure that caused misfortune to befall any tiger shark warship he came into contact with. It wasn't that the fleet didn't retaliate, but it was completely useless. Instead, it caused many casualties. Zixian's fleet this time consisted of one central warship that could accommodate 1,000 people, and two large warships that could accommodate 300 people each. Yu Yao was in charge of both warships, while the rest were in groups of 5. There were nearly 500 tiger shark warships in total. In the entire Myriad Sea, only a top force like Zixian Island could produce such a large fleet. No force below the top-tier spiritual islands could contend with such a large fleet. When news of Zixian's attack on the three-world island spread, all the cultivators thought that the island was in for a bad time. This upper-tier spiritual island that had only been established for less than 10 years would definitely be conquered and have a new master. However, no one expected that this crazy battle would not start on the three-world island, but on Zixian's way. The third island master of the three-world island, Lu Yi, single-handedly led the fleet, destroying the tiger shark warships and slaughtering Zixian's cultivators. Zixian's enormous fleet was helpless against this. Not to mention the fate of the three-world island, just this feat of one person fighting against an entire fleet was enough to be passed down for hundreds of years. End of chapter. Chapter 1851. The tiger shark battleship's offensive and defensive capabilities were roughly equivalent to an early Yu Yao, but this didn't mean that a single tiger shark battleship was an actual Yu Yao. In the end, it was just a battleship. In terms of mobility and reaction speed, the cultivators themselves were naturally faster. Cultivators needed some time to charge up the tiger shark's attacks. As the tiger shark battleships were destroyed one after another, the Yao cultivators also realized that they would only be sitting ducks if they continued like this. Right now, it would take time for Yu Yao to return to defend. If they wanted to protect themselves, they had to be flexible. Immediately, many Yao cultivators leaped out of the tiger shark battleships. They held kindred spirit formation discs and activated their Yao Qi to form a formation. Although they had lost the protection of the tiger shark battleships, the power they could unleash wouldn't be reduced by much when they formed a formation. Furthermore, their reactions would be faster. In the blink of an eye, at least a few dozen formations had been formed. They surrounded Lu Yi from all directions. Lu Yi coldly observed. He raised his hand and pulled out the mountain pan saber from one of the tiger shark battleships beneath his feet. With a gentle swing, he charged towards the nearest formation. That formation was formed by 5 Yao cultivators. Because their cultivation levels were different, in theory, the strength they could unleash was inferior to Yu Yao's. How could such a formation block Lu Ye's charge? Even a real Yu Yao wouldn't be able to block his path. The instant their figures collided, 5 blossoms of blood blossomed in the air. However, this savage scene didn't scare away the other Yao cultivators. Instead, it aroused their ferocity. The Zixuan Demon Star was the only top-tier realm in the universe ruled by the Yao clan. However, the environment for Yao cultivators to grow up in this realm wasn't peaceful. Instead, it was filled with slaughter and natural selection. Those who could rise to prominence on the Zixuan Demon Star and cultivate to the constellation realm were all people who had experienced many life and death situations. Even without Yu Yao present, these constellation realm Yao cultivators were still extremely ferocious. After the first formation was destroyed, the surrounding formations didn't retreat. Instead, they advanced and swarmed towards Lu Yi, using various techniques to bombard him. Lu Ye's figure leaped forward. He slashed out with his saber, and none of his attacks missed. Along with the bursts of blood, corpses fell one after another. The huge battlefield was like a pot of boiling oil that had been sprinkled with salt, completely boiling. There were even more beast cultivators who formed a formation and charged towards the fiercest area of the battle. The cultivators who were watching from afar were also stunned by this shocking scene. They were all amazed by the tenacity and fearlessness of the Zixian beast cultivators. Lu Yi gradually began to feel some pressure. This was rather inconceivable, and it allowed him to deeply understand what it meant by ants could bite an elephant to death. There was no way he could use the leaping technique at will, because the place he was in had been completely surrounded by Purple Jade's Yao cultivators. He couldn't even see the light outside, which showed how many enemies had gathered. In such a situation, the technique of leaping was undoubtedly greatly restricted. If not for the protection of the defensive spirit tattoo, he would have definitely been injured. Even if he frequently activated the defensive spirit tattoo, there would still be times when his defense would falter. This was because there were a large number of attacks coming at him from all directions at every moment. In the face of such a situation, the most correct method was undoubtedly to find a direction, kill a bloody path, and escape the enemy's encirclement. Only then would there be room to play. It wasn't that Lu Yi didn't know this, but he didn't do it. He was waiting. Purple Jade Island had waited for a year to let him watch a big show. Now, he was going to give them a taste of their own medicine. Suddenly, half an incense stick of time passed, and the number of Zhixian beast cultivators who had died under Lu Ye's blade had reached more than 100, but the number of beast cultivators surrounding him did not decrease. Instead, it increased. Seeing that Lu Yi seemed to be a little tired and unable to escape, many beast cultivators suddenly became aggressive, as if they had been injected with chicken blood, and looked like they were going to kill him here and now. Hu Guang, Bao Yuyu, and Yuan Che finally rushed back. Seeing this amazing scene from afar, Yuan Che couldn't help but grin. "Little ones, you did well." The three of them had chased after Lu Yi on Yu Yao to no avail, but they didn't expect that guy to be surrounded by a group of star mansions. This was undoubtedly because he was too arrogant, thinking that just because he had some strength, he could look down on all of Zhixian's beast cultivators. Now, he had suffered a great loss. Hu Guang also calmed down a little. Sending troops to Zhixian had been unfavorable at first, suffering losses from Lu Ye's sneak attack, but if they could kill him here, those losses were not unacceptable. "Follow me to kill the enemy," Hu Guang shouted, his eyes revealing a dense killing intent. Bao Yuyu and Yuan Che both urged their strength and quickly approached the airtight battle. Surrounded by so many beast cultivators, Lu Yi keenly sensed Hu Guang's aura at the center of the battle like a black ball. Calculating the time, it was indeed time for him to return. A good show was about to begin. He only hoped that Zhixian's beast cultivators would not be disappointed. Raising his hand, a bone blade suddenly appeared in his left hand. Unlike the mountain plate blade in his right hand, this bone blade was held in reverse by his left hand. Lu Ye's expression became calm, and the blood in his body suddenly began to boil. Even the flesh and blood under his clothes began to tremble. The mountain plate blade slashed down, and before the blade's momentum was over, Lu Yi spun and raised his bone blade. The first few strikes were still traceable, but in the blink of an eye, the two long blades in Lu Ye's hands had turned into a storm as he spun around. Blade light wreaked havoc, blade chi crisscrossed, and killing intent so condensed it was almost tangible. Hu Guang, who was rapidly approaching the battle, suddenly felt his heart skip a beat as he keenly sensed some unusual changes. But before he could figure out what these changes were, he saw a scene that made his blood run cold. Within the dense black ball surrounded by Zhixian's beast cultivators, a violent storm of blades suddenly appeared. The scale of the storm rapidly expanded in all directions at a speed visible to the naked eye. The huge black ball formed by the beast cultivators didn't even last a breath of time before shattering. Blood poured out like a waterfall, and countless severed limbs flew everywhere. In that instant, countless life auras were annihilated. As the storm of blades continued to expand, even more beast cultivators were drawn into it, and even more life auras withered. Only those beast cultivators who were further away from the center of the battle saw that the situation was not good and fled quickly enough to save their lives. Sensing the terrifying power of the storm of blades, Hu Guang didn't dare to approach. He only stared blankly ahead, his lips trembling, completely drained of blood. Bao Yuyu and Yuan Che's eyes also trembled. With such a violent attack, even late-stage Yu Yao cultivators like them would find it difficult to escape death if they were drawn into it, let alone those constellation mansions. Gradually, the storm of blades subsided. On the vast battlefield, only a single figure remained standing. His aura was violent, and his blood was boiling. Severed limbs and flesh were scattered all around him, dripping into the 10,000 elephant sea. That figure, however, was not stained by a single drop of blood. Of all the sword techniques that Lu Yi had mastered, the most suitable one to deal with a large number of enemies was undoubtedly the Great Windmill. This was actually a sword technique that he had developed to deal with such situations, but Lu Yi had always used it to forcefully kill Rizhou. The result of this test was indeed extraordinary. Tilting his head slightly, Lu Yi met Hu Guang's shocked eyes. He shook off the blood on his two long swords and asked, "Is it brilliant? Is it beautiful?" Only then did Hu Guang come to his senses. He gritted his teeth and shouted, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth, "Lu Yi, I, Zixian, will not rest until you die." In that short period of time, at least 300 beast cultivators had died an unnatural death. Including those who had died before, after Zixian sent troops to the Three-World Island, Lu Yi had killed almost 400 constellation mansions. This didn't include the 200 he had killed on Zixian Island. If he counted them, it would be 600. Lu Yi said coldly, "What nonsense are you talking about? Ever since you, Zixian, killed my three-world Yu Yao, we have already become enemies." Good. Hu Guang was so angry that he almost lost his mind. He rushed toward Lu Yi in a flash. Bao Yuyu and Yuan Che followed closely behind. The three Yu Yao immediately formed a pincer attack. Lu Yi, who was so arrogant just now, had no intention of fighting with the three of them. Seeing this scene, he immediately rushed away and shouted from afar, "Zixian's 4,000 beast cultivators, let's see how long you can last." He had killed 400 in one wave. With such a terrifying killing efficiency, a few more waves and the Zixian fleet would probably lose the ability to fight before they reached the Three-World Island. As soon as these words came out, Hu Guang immediately seemed to be enlightened and stopped. Just now, the three Yu Yao were lured away by Lu Yi. In the end, Lu Yi came back and killed 400 of Zixian's beast cultivators. This time, he would not repeat the same mistake. As he stopped, he sent a voice transmission to Bao Yuyu and Yuan Che. "Don't give him any time to breathe. Just delay him." At the same time, he turned and ordered, "Continue forward." The rhythm of the battle could not fall into the enemy's hands. Although the Zixian fleet had suffered heavy losses just now, it did not affect the overall situation. When the Zixian fleet reached the Three-World Island, they would have the rhythm of the battle in their hands. At that time, Lu Yi would no longer be able to jump around. With Hu Guang leading the fleet, he could prevent Lu Yi from coming back like before. The fleet continued forward, but this time it was smaller. Standing on the central battleship, Hu Guang coldly watched Lu Yi. The other party seemed to know that he couldn't use the same trick again, so he didn't move away. Under the pursuit of Bao Yuyu and Yuan Che, his figure was constantly moving. A moment later, Hu Guang was surprised to see Lu Yi suddenly turn around and take the initiative to meet Ape Che. From the looks of it, he was annoyed by the chase and knew that he couldn't escape. Hu Guang's heart settled. Once Ape Che entangled Lu Yi and Bao Yuyu attacked, he would take the opportunity to join the battle. At that time, it would be 3 against 1 and they would be able to get their revenge. On the other side, when Yuan Che saw Lu Yi rushing towards him, he immediately shouted, "Come!" Lu Yi was annoyed by the pursuit, but Yuan Che was also annoyed because Lu Yi had not fought them head-on from beginning to end, leaving him no room to display his strength. End of chapter. Chapter 1852. As he fled, Ape Che saw Lu Yi charging towards him and met him head-on without fear. In fact, it could even be said that he couldn't wait. As a fellow Yu Yao, his cultivation was a level higher than Lu Ye's, so he naturally didn't fear him. Although he wasn't afraid, Ape Che didn't underestimate his opponent. When they decided to attack Three-World Island, Zixian and the others had carefully gathered information on them. What they were most concerned about was Lu Ye's strength. This was a powerhouse who'd forced Yu Huan into a corner in the early stages of the Yu Yao era. His strength couldn't be judged by his cultivation alone. Moreover, Ape Che had personally witnessed the sharpness of the mountain plate saber, so his plan was simple. He didn't need to kill Lu Yi. As long as he could keep him occupied for a moment, Bao Yuyu and Hu Guang would be able to reinforce him. When that time came, it would be 3 against 1. No matter how powerful Lu Yi was, he wouldn't be able to survive. Ape Che's demonic chi surged as golden light enveloped his entire body. He'd activated an extremely powerful defensive technique. At the same time, his already tall figure swelled several times over, transforming into a giant ape with long arms, white fur, and 2 sharp fangs. For a Yao cultivator, revealing his true form meant he was going all out. Ape Che bared his fangs and glared at Lu Yi with scarlet eyes. As he swung his arm back, the flesh on his arm began to wriggle. The distance between the two rapidly closed as their auras soared. Then, Ape Che saw a scene that he couldn't understand. Lu Yi, who'd been charging towards him, had sheathed his saber for some unknown reason, his right hand gripping the hilt as his eyes drooped. In that instant, Ape Che's hair stood on end as a great sense of crisis welled up in his heart. However, the distance between them was too close and there was no time for him to retreat. Although he didn't know what Lu Yi was going to do next, Ape Che, who bore the brunt of the attack, made the most appropriate response. The arm he'd swung behind him suddenly swung forward like a whip, lashing out at the void. This attack didn't aim to kill, only to delay his opponent for a moment. Although the sense of crisis in his heart was fierce, he was confident he could accomplish this. Ape Che's arm slammed into Lu Ye's body, causing him to vanish into thin air. But Ape Che wasn't happy at all, because he could see that it was just a shadow that had disappeared. Lu Ye's true body appeared right in front of Ape Che. Ape Che raised his other arm, intending to do the same, but Lu Yi had already unsheathed his mountain blade. The bright blade light became like a rising sun, causing all the spectating cultivators to fall into a daze. Following the unsheathing of the blade was an incomparably terrifying slash. Ape Che's eyes widened. At this moment, he felt like he wasn't facing a mid-stage moon jade, but a Rizhao. He finally understood why he felt such a strong sense of danger earlier. The two figures brushed past each other, both maintaining their forward momentum. The difference was that Lu Ye's speed did not decrease, while Ape Che's figure slowly came to a stop. He stood in the air with a bitter expression. Ape Che's gaze met Bao Yuyu's and he could clearly see the fear in her eyes. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. As it turned out, he couldn't even stop her for a moment. Lu Yi of the Three Realms Island, a mid-stage moon jade. How could his strength be so terrifying? Ape Che believed he hadn't made a single mistake in his actions. He hadn't underestimated his opponent or been arrogant in the slightest, but even so, he still couldn't escape his fate. Careful! Ape Che shouted. As soon as his words fell, the golden light around him shattered. Even the huge monster's true body was split in half and fell into the deep sea, blood and organs scattering everywhere. Bao Yuyu's eyes trembled violently. She raised her hand to grab Ape Che's corpse, but it was too late. She could only watch as the two halves of the corpse disappeared from her sight. She stood in place, stunned. She almost thought she was dreaming. The scene in front of her was simply too bizarre. As a late-stage moon jade cultivator like Ape Che, Bao Yuyu's temperament naturally wasn't too bad. Moreover, she was born in a top realm like the Purple Jade Monster Star. It could be said that in the entire Moon Jade Monster realm, the monster races of Purple Jade Island were true masters. The fact that she had fallen into a daze showed how great the impact of the scene just now was. Junior Sister Bao. An angry roar jolted Bao Yuyu back to her senses. At the same time, she felt a sharp aura lock onto her. Quickly raising her head, she saw Lu Yi had already returned, rushing towards her at an extremely fast speed. Ape Che had died in front of her without being able to put up any resistance. How could Bao Yuyu dare stay where she was? She immediately dashed to the side. In that direction was Hu Guang, who had come to her rescue. A few breaths later, Bao Yuyu looked back and saw that Lu Yi had stopped. He was no longer pursuing her and was simply staring coldly at her. This made Bao Yuyu feel like she had just escaped death. 2 more breaths later, she finally met up with Hu Guang. The 2 monster cultivators didn't dare to hesitate and returned to the central battleship. The fleet was still carrying out Hu Guang's orders and heading towards Three World Island. However, the seemingly aggressive fleet had lost its valiant and majestic aura. After witnessing all the changes and terrifying slaughter, the entire fleet was shrouded in an inexplicable atmosphere. All the monster cultivators felt a chill run down their spines as they stared at the human figures still standing in the distance. How could this be? Bao Yu muttered to herself, her eyes red. At the beginning, so many star constellations had died. It could be said that they had made a mistake in their strategy and were led away by Lu Yi, but now even Ape Che had died. And in a direct confrontation, he had been killed without being able to put up any resistance. Bao Yuyu's heart was filled with grief and joy. Fortunately, Lu Ye's target was not her, otherwise the one who would have died now would not be Ape Che, but her. Hu Guang's lips were pale and he clenched his fists tightly. Although he didn't want to believe it, everything had happened right under his nose. He had no choice but to admit one thing: we underestimated him too much. He had seen Ape Che's response without the slightest bit of greed, but he still couldn't escape death. In the end, he had failed to properly assess his opponent's strength. Thinking back to everything that had happened after the invasion of Three World Island, Lu Yi had first come alone to harass the fleet, deliberately leading the three Yu Yao away. Then, through some unknown means, he turned around and wantonly slaughtered everyone in the fleet. After the three of them returned to defend, Lu Yi led them to stay behind and guard the fleet while Ape Che and Bao Yuyu joined forces to pursue him. Originally, they thought they would have no problem fighting 2 against 1, but in the end they lost Ape Che. From the very beginning, the rhythm of the battle had been in Lu Ye's hands. Purple Jade's Yao cultivators were completely led by the nose. Every word and action of Lu Ye's had a strong purpose. At the very beginning, Lu Yi had even deliberately pretended that his aura was weak because of the loss of his doppelganger. It was laughable that Hu Guang hadn't been able to see through him at all. It was said that foxes were cunning by nature, but compared to everything Lu Yi had done in such a short time, Hu Guang felt that he was simply pitifully naive. Three World Islands Lu Yi, this guy, was definitely born with a very dirty heart. What kind of method was that? Bao Yuyu asked in horror. Although she had luckily escaped death, recalling that terrifying saber strike, Bao Yuyu still felt a lingering fear. Hu Guang shook his head. How could he know what kind of method it was? Ape Che couldn't block that saber strike, which meant he and Bao Yuyu couldn't either. In all of Purple Jade, perhaps only First Island Master Lionheart could survive that saber strike. No matter what kind of method it was, that kind of secret technique must have caused great damage to him. Hu Guang stared in Lu Ye's direction. The reason he came to this conclusion was because he noticed that Lu Yi showed signs of swallowing a large number of spirit pills. This undoubtedly meant that after that saber strike, Lu Yi also needed time to recover, so he hadn't pursued them. Perhaps this is an opportunity. Hu Guang's heart skipped a beat. Logically speaking, if his deduction was correct, then Lu Yi should be an arrow at the end of its flight at this moment. If he and Bao Yuyu went back, they might be able to accomplish something. However, he didn't dare to make this decision, because once he made a wrong judgment, it would only make the situation worse. Moreover, he couldn't be sure whether Lu Ye's current actions were intentional or not. Lu Yi had already lost one of his 3 Yu Yao clones, so the remaining 2 might still have the strength to resist if they joined forces, but if they lost another one, they would really be defeated one by one. Hu Guang's heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly realized something sad. In this confrontation with Lu Yi, he had already fallen into a disadvantage. No matter what Lu Yi did, he would always feel that the other party was playing tricks. This made Hu Guang's eyes darken, and he felt bitter. On the other side, Lu Yi, who had already swallowed a large number of spirit pills, couldn't help but reveal a look of disappointment when he saw the fleet getting further and further away from him. This was because he really did want to lure Hu Guang and Bao Yuyu out to fight. Although he had already used the saber draw and he didn't have the ability to quickly kill a powerful enemy, he still had the precious blood doppelganger. As long as Hu Guang and Bao Yuyu dared to fight him, he could summon the precious blood doppelganger to form a large array. At that time, these 2 Yu Yao clones would be doomed. As long as he dealt with Hu Guang and Bao Yuyu, this large fleet would be his prey, and he could kill them however he wanted. Unfortunately, these 2 Yu Yao clones were avoiding the battle, so he could only use other methods. Under the gazes of countless Yao cultivators, Lu Yi, who had been standing in place all this time, finally moved. His figure turned into a stream of light as he chased after the fleet, dodging the incoming attacks. Soon he landed on a tiger shark warship at the rear of the fleet. He pulled out his mountain saber, and his eyes met with Hu Guang's from afar. His calm expression was full of provocation as he thrust his saber down, cutting through the defense of the tiger shark warship like tofu. The slaughter began again. Hu Guang let out a long sigh, finally confirming that Lu Yi had indeed been pretending to be weak just now. While he was glad that he hadn't taken the risk, he had to make a humiliating decision. Return to the island. Chapter 1853. Today, the Wanxiang Sea was bustling with activity because another major event had happened. As a top-tier spiritual island, Zixian had suddenly sent troops to attack the three-world island. This time, 3 late-stage Yuyao cultivators and 4,000 constellations formed a huge fleet. As the news spread, it didn't take long for everyone in the Wanxiang Sea to know about this. Some nearby cultivators immediately rushed over to check on the situation. Those far away also hurried over, not wanting to miss such a grand event. In the vast Wanxiang Sea, there were all kinds of disputes. Almost every moment, there were battles and massacres. Cultivators from different galaxies clashed here, causing the entire Wanxiang Sea to maintain an extraordinarily lively scene. However, in the midst of all this excitement, it was rare to see top-tier spiritual islands sending troops to attack other spiritual islands. This was because top-tier spiritual islands were powerful. Since they had already occupied a top-tier spiritual island, they basically had no desires. If there was no great enmity between them, they wouldn't bully the weak. The last time a top-tier spiritual island sent troops was nearly 10,000 years ago. Therefore, when the news of Zixian sending troops spread, it attracted the attention of so many cultivators. Moreover, Zixian's target was the three-world island, which was currently in the limelight. As a spiritual island that was born less than 10 years ago, it had become one of the few extremely successful commercial spiritual islands in the entire Wanxiang Sea. The rise of the three-world island was also quite legendary. Whether it was the rapid attack on Baiyue Island or the offending of the Sunshine Guardian, it was extremely eye-catching. Although the news from Zixian's side was that the newly ascended Yu Yao of the three-world island had killed Zixian's Yao cultivators for no reason, that was why they had sent their troops to attack. However, such an excuse could only fool the newcomers who had just arrived at the Myriad Phenomenon Sea. Any veteran cultivator who had spent some time at the Myriad Phenomenon Sea knew that this was only an excuse. Only Zixian herself knew the true reason for sending her troops. Everyone thought that the three-world island was going to be unlucky this time. This was because Zixian far surpassed the three-world island in terms of resources and the number of cultivators. The overall strength of the two sides could be said to be very different. But no one could have imagined that the Violet Jade monster cultivators, who had mobilized such a large fleet, would actually be intercepted by a single person. After an astonishing slaughter, the Violet Jade monster cultivators lost several hundred constellations and Yu Yao was alone. In the end, they were forced to retreat before they had even traveled halfway. According to the cultivators who witnessed the battle with their own eyes, the one who did such a shocking feat was the third island master of the three-world island, Lu Yi. Although this person's cultivation was only at the middle stage of the Yu Yao realm, his strength was terrifying to the extreme. He single-handedly intercepted Zixian's fleet and slaughtered his way into their midst, easily destroying several tiger shark battleships and drawing Zixian's 3 Yu Yao experts away. After that, Lu Yi turned around and killed hundreds of Zixian's Yao cultivators on his own. The most shocking thing was that the third island lord of Purple Jade Island, Ape Che, was killed by Lu Yi with a single slash. Ape Che didn't even have a chance to fight back. Rumor had it that when Lu Yi slashed with his saber, he was like a god of war descending from the three-world island. He was unstoppable and the brilliance of his saber made heaven and earth pale in comparison. After that, the second island lord of Purple Jade, Hu Guang, saw that the situation wasn't good and ordered his fleet to retreat. Lu Yi pursued them relentlessly, causing great losses to Zixian. It was only when Zixian's fleet retreated to their home island that the battle came to a temporary end. News after news was spread by the cultivators who were watching the battle from afar. It spread to the entire Wanxiang Sea almost immediately. All the cultivators who didn't see it for themselves found it hard to believe that it was true. However, the news didn't come from the same place. There were many cultivators who were watching the battle from afar, so they could all verify it. This meant that the seemingly unbelievable news wasn't fake. The entire Wanxiang Sea was shaken. Before today, no one would have thought that the battle for Spiritual Island could be fought in such a way. Lu Yi single-handedly stopped an enormous fleet of nearly 1,000 people and even caused great losses to the enemy. Let alone the Wanxiang Sea, even the entire starry sky had never seen such a ridiculous thing before. Looking at this battle, Zixian had launched an aggressive attack but ended it so carelessly. Whether it was in terms of reputation or actual losses, it was unimaginable. To be able to achieve such a feat, Lu Yi of the Three-World Island must be extremely powerful. It was truly difficult to predict. He was weak against strong, but he killed Yuan Che with a single saber strike. Although there were traces of some secret technique, it was still shocking. One had to know that Lu Yi of the Three-World Island was only at the middle stage of the Moon Jade Realm. If he already had such strength now, what would happen if he advanced to the late stage of the Moon Jade Realm? Currently, Zixian's demonic cultivators were in seclusion, and Lu Yi was stationed 500 li away from Zixian Island. He didn't put Zixian in his eyes at all, and he was determined to kill any demonic cultivator who dared to leave the island. As a result, no demon cultivator on Zixian Island dared to leave the island easily. Even the demon cultivators of Zixian who had stayed outside previously went into hiding, not daring to show their faces. In other words, the great Zixian Island was blocked. Countless cultivators were looking forward to how this battle would develop. The conflict between the two spiritual islands had reached such a level that it would not end until one side died. Needless to say, Zixian Island had been famous for so many years. As a top-tier spiritual island, how could they tolerate being blocked at their doorstep? One of the two sides would definitely have to leave. 500 miles away from Zixian, on an extremely small deserted island, Lu Yi sat cross-legged. He looked leisurely in the direction of Zixian Island, thinking about how to break the other party's defensive formation. He had to admit that although he had killed many Zixian demon cultivators, and even 3 Moon Jade Realm cultivators had died at his hands, this could not shake the foundation of Zixian Island. This was because the dead cultivators could be replaced. As long as Zixian Island still existed, the demon cultivators of Zixian would have a foothold. The enmity with Zixian could not be resolved. From the moment Wei Po was swallowed by Lionheart, Zixian had already stood on the opposite side of the Three-World Island. However, this top-tier spiritual island could not be compared to Baiyue. To deal with Baiyue, Lu Yi could sneak in and destroy the formation's foundation to weaken the defensive formation's power. Then, the Three-World Island's cultivators could break it from the outside. However, the same method could not be used against Zixian. This was because even if he succeeded in destroying a few of the formation's foundations, Zixian's defensive formation would not be broken if he could not destroy all the foundations. Even if the defensive strength was weakened, the Three-World Island's current foundation would not be able to break it completely. This defensive formation that had been maintained for tens of thousands of years was unimaginably sturdy. Unless Rizhao attacked, it would be impossible to break it. In this case, returning to the 9 states to find Rizhao of the humanoid tribe to ask for 2 red talismans was a good idea. When he went to the Magic Eye Blood, the humanoid tribe gave him 3 red talismans. 1 for attack, 1 for defense, and 1 for escape. He had already used the first 2 red talismans. He only had 1 red talisman left for escape. It was not suitable for such a situation. However, no matter how fast he was, a round trip would take 2 months. If he was not in the Wanxiang Sea, once Zixian Island made a move, the Three-World Island would be in danger. Moreover, the humanoid tribe did not have an endless supply of red talismans. Previously, the 3 tribes gave him 3 red talismans. Even if he went back to ask for more, he might not be able to get a suitable red talisman. However, if he did not borrow the power of the red talismans, how could he break Zixian's defensive formation? This matter gave Lu Yi quite a headache, because in his plan, only by breaking the other side's defensive array would he be able to take full control of the battle. At that time, he would be able to go to Purple Jade Island as he pleased. Even Lionheart would not be able to stop him. After thinking about it, he still could not figure out a way. Moreover, he could not stay here forever. This was undoubtedly a waste of time. What if Zixian remained in seclusion? After pondering for a while, Lu Yi simply set up a formation on the spot. After a short while, the formation activated and concealed his figure. The reason why he did this was mainly because there were many cultivators around to watch the show. Any movement he made would be under the watchful eyes of those cultivators. Zixian must have spies among these cultivators. Under the cover of the formation, Lu Yi condensed his talent tree clone and put on his clothes. His main body activated the concealment and aura concealment spirit tattoos to enhance himself and quietly left. Half a day later, Lu Yi quietly returned to the three-world island. The island's Yu Yao had gathered in the meeting hall. Tang Jun looked at Lu Yi with a smile. "Little brother, you're so impressive now. The entire Wanxiang Sea is saying that you're the strongest person under the sun." The Wanxiang Sea was a place where cultivators from countless galaxies gathered. There were many Yu Yao, and the Yu Yao who came from various major forces varied in strength. However, even someone like Lionheart did not dare to claim that he was the strongest person under the sun. After all, there was always someone better than him. However, after this battle, Lu Ye's title as the strongest person under the sun was confirmed. Ape Che was strong enough, but he still could not block the power of his saber. In the entire Wanxiang Sea, which Yu Yao could do so. However, Lu Yi was not happy. He only said indifferently, "Those who would say that must have ulterior motives." Tang Jun was stunned for a moment, then nodded. Indeed. Even though Lu Yi had the battle record of killing Ape Che with a single saber strike, the title of the strongest person under the sun was still too heavy. Cultivators were all fierce and competitive. It was not good to have such a title without a strong enough background. "But why did you come back?" Tang Jun asked again. "Didn't you say that you were guarding Zixian?" "I left my clone there. Zixian's Yao cultivators would not dare to go out at will for the time being." Tang Jun nodded. If Zixian's Yao cultivators did not come out, it would be a waste of time for Lu Yi to stay there. Luan Xiao asked, "Junior brother, what do you plan to do next?" Lu Yi said, "If you don't kill the snake, there will be trouble in the future. Naturally, I want to attack and occupy Zixian. Zixian has suffered heavy losses. Just the Yu Yao guards alone are missing too. This is a good opportunity." The loss of Yu Yao guards could be replaced, but the prerequisite was that they had to go to the Wanxiang Sea to register first. This was why Lu Yi said this was an opportunity. Chapter 1854. As long as they didn't give Purple Jade's Yao cultivators a chance to register on the Island of Versatility, then even if Purple Jade Island had more experts, there would still only be 3 Yu Yao guarding it. It won't be that easy to take over Purple Jade. Tang Jun frowned. "I've been to various major spiritual islands over the years, and I've even been to a few top-tier spiritual islands. Their defensive formations have all been accumulated over a long period of time and are constantly operating at full power. Their defenses are extremely strong. At this stage, it's basically impossible to break through without Rizhao's help." This was undoubtedly a headache for Lu Yi. He was extremely proficient in battle. Even if he had to face Purple Jade's fleet alone, he wouldn't be afraid. In fact, he even had some success. However, in a battle on the Island of Versatility, just killing enemies was useless unless he had the ability to wipe out all of Purple Jade's Yao cultivators. Luan Xiao said, "Junior brother, if you really want to take over Purple Jade, we'll have to mobilize all of our 3 World Islands cultivators. Not only that, we'll also have to borrow troops from 4 World Island. When that happens, 5 Yu Yao and 4,000 cultivators. If we work well, we might still have a chance." Lu Yi slowly shook his head. "That's not right. In a battle, The defending side has always held the absolute advantage. I've already investigated Purple Jade's deployment. Their defensive fortifications aren't just for show. If we really send a large army to attack, we'll definitely suffer great losses before we even get close. He Baichuan said, just like last time, what if we find an opportunity to infiltrate Purple Jade? You have the Little Flower Realm. You can bring people down from the sky and disrupt them from the inside. This time, before Lu Yi could speak, Tang Jun shook his head and said, it won't work. Purple Jade and Baiyue are completely different in size and foundation. Ignoring the fact that Lu Yi won't have a chance to sneak in under Purple Jade's watchful eyes, even if he did, the Little Flower Realm's capacity is limited. It can't hold too many cultivators. Lu Yi had returned mainly to brainstorm because he didn't have any leads on his side. Unfortunately, even after discussing it with the other Yu Yao on the island, they didn't manage to make any breakthroughs. Helpless, they could only disperse. The talent tree avatar was monitoring the movements on Purple Jade Island, but it could not see anything for the time being. It seemed that after suffering a big loss before, Zixian did not dare to act rashly. Thinking about it, Zixian's side had been the first to launch an attack and gathered a large fleet, but in the end, Lu Yi had single-handedly slaughtered them all. He had even lost a late-stage Yu Yao and several hundred lunar mansions. His domineering method of killing Ape Che had undoubtedly caused Zixian and Yu Yao to be extremely wary. Until they had a suitable method to deal with him, Zixian would definitely not send any more troops. With so many cultivators watching, Zixian should be under a lot of pressure as well. After all, she had already made her threat. As a top-grade spiritual island, it would not be easy for her to regain her dignity after being blocked at her doorstep. On Zixian's side, unless Lionheart personally took action, no one would have the courage to face Lu Yi one-on-one. However, from Zixian's current state of seclusion, Lionheart also had some misgivings. As if he could see Lu Ye's depression, Tang Jun brought a few jugs of wine to look for Lu Yi after a while. In the past, he rarely stayed on the three-world island and basically walked around the various spiritual islands in the Wanxiang Sea. However, with the current tense situation, he did not dare to casually go out. The old man and the young man sat opposite each other. Tang Jun had found some snacks from somewhere and the two of them ate and drank leisurely. Actually, after thinking about it, the one who should be anxious is not us, but Zixian. Tang Jun had the air of a judge. Look, Zixian's side is blocked by you and the cultivators do not dare to go out. They have the reputation of being a top-grade spiritual island. They can tolerate you for a while, but they definitely won't be able to tolerate you for long. Therefore, as long as we wait and see, they will definitely make a move. When the time comes, we will have a chance to break through. Lu Yi naturally understood this, but the key was how long would they have to wait? 1 year, 2 years, 3 to 5 years? As long as Zixian lowered her status, she could endure for so long, but Lu Yi could not wait that long. Wei Pa died tragically in front of his eyes. It happened so suddenly that Lu Yi did not expect Lionheart to do such a cruel thing and did not have time to rescue him. Although he did not have much friendship with Wei Pa and did not even have many interactions, Wei Pa was still a cultivator of the three-world island and was Luan Xiao's junior brother. His life and death was related to the honor and disgrace of all the cultivators of the three-world island. I boldly guess that not long after, someone will come to make peace. Tang Jun picked up a fried spiritual fruit that looked like a peanut and threw it into his mouth. Lu Yi silently drank a mouthful of wine. When we were fighting Baiyue, someone also came to make peace. He remembered that the other party called himself Yellow Dragon Gu Chuan and was invited by Yu Huan to persuade them. In the end, Lu Yi ignored him. When Gu Chuan saw Lu Ye's firm attitude, he did not say anything more and left in a carefree manner. If one person comes to make peace, you can ignore them. However, what if there are 2, 3, or even more people? He even said, what if someone asked him to come? Lu Yi raised his head and looked at him. Tang Jun said, that is very likely to happen. These top-tier spiritual islands have close ties with each other. Also, let me digress. You've been very impressive this time, but your terrifying battle record is also very frightening. If you can block the entrance of Purple Jade Island this time, Will you block the entrance of other top-tier spiritual islands in the future? Everyone says that you're the #1 person under the sun. You're only in the middle stage of the Moon Jade Island now. When you reach the late stage of the Moon Jade Island, won't you be riding on top of all the other Moon Jade Islands? The survival of Purple Jade Island may not be directly related to the interests of other forces, but with a variable like you in the Wanxiang Sea, they have to be careful. If the situation develops to the point where all the forces hope that the Three-World Island and Purple Jade Island will make peace, then we will have no choice. If we don't go along with their wishes, then the Three-World Island will become the public enemy of the entire Wanxiang Sea. When that time comes, how will we have a foothold in the vast Wanxiang Sea? Also, we have to consider that Old Man Yuan Do That Dog will definitely add fuel to the fire behind the scenes. Lu Yi narrowed his eyes and looked at Old Tang. Why do I feel like you're just a lobbyist now? Old Tang threw another spirit fruit into his mouth and chewed loudly. Isn't that right? You can already feel the pressure of the general trend. This old man is only analyzing the possibilities of the future with you. However, this possibility will really happen, and it won't be too far away. His expression turned serious. Therefore, if we really want to take down Purple Jade, we have to end this quickly and settle the dust before that possibility happens. That way, we can shut everyone up. Lu Yi nodded. He knew why Old Tang was telling him all this. Although he was eager to take down Purple Jade Island, he did not realize these potential problems. However, after hearing Old Tang's words, he immediately understood that this matter could not be delayed. Have the top-tier spiritual islands in the Wanxiang Sea never been taken down before? Lu Yi asked. Old Tang had been running around the Wanxiang Sea all these years and had made countless friends. He was definitely more well-informed than Lu Yi. Tang Jun shook his head. No, this has never happened before. Under the current rules of the Wanxiang Sea, no force can break the protective formation of a top-tier spiritual island. Naturally, it's impossible to take it down. Therefore, kid, if we can do it, we'll be the first in history. Even if the Three-World Island is not a top-tier spiritual island, it'll still be better than one. As he spoke, he changed the topic and pondered. However, although no one has ever taken down a top-tier spiritual island, there are precedents of the protective formation of a top-tier spiritual island being broken. Lu Yi was instantly energized. Tell me more. Tang Jun said, actually, it's not really broken. It was just shut down due to some problems and then repaired. Have you heard of Illusory Island? Lu Yi nodded. Of course. There were a few top-tier spiritual islands in the Wanxiang Sea, and Illusory Island was one of them. No matter how ignorant Lu Yi was, he had heard of it before. I heard that it's the smallest top-tier spiritual island? That's right. Tang Jun nodded. Among all the top-tier spiritual islands in the Wanxiang Sea, the largest one is undoubtedly the Wanxiang Island. After all, it's a spiritual island occupied by a local force. Although the other top-tier spiritual islands are of different sizes, the difference is not very big. Illusory Island is the only exception. It's pathetically small. Even now, there are only 1,000 cultivators stationed there. It could only accommodate 1,000 cultivators, so it was not big at all. You're considered proficient in formations, so you should know that the longer a protective formation is built up, the stronger its defensive power will be. Lu Yi nodded. Of course, he knew how the protective formation worked. Simply put, the protective formation was both a formation and a container. The energy produced by the spiritual island, excluding the energy consumed by the cultivators, would be absorbed by the protective formation and stored in the base of the formation to maintain its operation. Therefore, the longer a protective formation existed, the more energy it would store, and the stronger its defensive power would be, and the longer it could be maintained. This was the fundamental reason why there was a huge difference between the protective formations of Purple Jade Island and Baiyue Island. Purple Jade Island's protective formation had been operating for tens of thousands of years, while Baiyue Island's protective formation had only been operating for 800 years. There was no comparison at all. By the same logic, when Lu Yi brought people to destroy Baiyue Island's base of formation hall, it was equivalent to destroying several points of the formation's energy storage. Not only did it destabilize the protective formation, but it also greatly weakened the formation's defensive power. This was why He Baichuan was able to lead his troops to break the formation from the outside. Initially, there weren't many cultivators stationed at Illusory Island. In the beginning, this illusory island did not station 1,000 cultivators, but 500. Due to the need for a proper arrangement of cultivators' residences, stationing 500 cultivators there was just right. However, a problem arose. The 500 cultivators did not consume enough energy while cultivating on the island. Most of the energy was absorbed and stored by the Great Defensive Array. In the beginning, there were no problems. However, as time went by, the array base's energy storage reached its limit and the entire Illusory Island's Great Defensive Array began operating at an overload. While the defensive array's strength was greatly increased, it was also accompanied by the risk of being destroyed. Left with no other choice, the cultivators of Illusory Island had to remove the Great Defensive Array, dissipating all the energy stored within the array base and rearranging it. Since that incident, Illusory Island has transferred even more cultivators to the island in order to consume as much energy as possible from the island. To this day, Illusory Island's Great Defensive Array has never encountered any problems. End of chapter. Chapter 1855. I've been to the Illusory Island. You don't know how crowded it is to have 1,000 cultivators on a small spiritual island. Tang Jun said excitedly, his face full of pride. Our three-world island is still the most comfortable and spacious place. The three-world island was indeed spacious. When Lu Yi asked Luan Xiaoa and the others to choose a place to stay, he deliberately chose this place. From the beginning, he planned to build the three-world island into a commercial spiritual island similar to the Wushuang Island. Not to mention the commercial area, the three-world island's cultivators' garrison area could accommodate thousands of cultivators without being crowded. While speaking, Tang Jun looked surprised. What's wrong? Lu Yi suddenly looked at him with bright eyes and stood up abruptly. I'm going out. What are you doing? Tang Jun didn't understand. They were talking nicely, but suddenly they had to go out, making him confused. Nothing, you can eat and drink, Lu Yi said as he walked out. When he reached the door, he suddenly turned back and said, if someone is invited to be a lobbyist, treat them well. But you don't have to agree to anything. But Tang Jun nodded subconsciously. A moment later, under the three-world island, Lu Yi swam like a fish and quickly came to the place where the minor constellation hall was originally set up. Looking around, the minor constellation hall was still there, constantly converting the energy of the sea into the three-world island. Since returning, he had been thinking about how to break Zixian's protective array. However, after talking with Tang Jun, he found that it was almost impossible unless he went back to Jiuzhou and asked Su Yuqing and the others for 2 offensive red talismans. However, the experience on the Illusory Island made him see another possibility. Maybe he didn't have to spend so much effort to break the protective array. It was a thankless task with a huge risk and a low success rate. However, if he looked at the problem from another perspective, there was a chance to solve it. With the limit of his thinking opened, Lu Yi felt more and more that it was feasible. At the Illusory Island, because the energy stored in the array base had reached the limit, the protective array was at risk of being destroyed. Therefore, if he could make Zixian experience the same situation as the Illusory Island, Zixian would only have 2 choices. She could either take the initiative to remove the protective array and set it up again, or watch the protective array explode from the huge energy. No matter which choice Zixian made, the protective array would no longer be a hindrance to Lu Yi. It was impossible for others to accomplish such a feat, however. If Lu Yi had the help of the minor constellation hall, he might have a chance of succeeding. Therefore, he couldn't wait to leave and came here. After finding the minor constellation hall, Lu Yi grabbed it and swam in the direction of the talent tree clone. Swimming underwater was naturally slower than flying in the air, but it was better in terms of concealment. Perhaps no one would have thought that at this very moment, there was a cultivator with ill intentions rapidly approaching Violet Jade Island from the bottom of the Myriad Manifestation Sea. It took a full day for Lu Yi to arrive directly below Purple Jade Island. to tease, estes, especially since Zixian's island, est. At this moment, when he carefully sensed, he noticed that there were tiny, almost imperceptible bubbles constantly growing in the seawater under Zixian Island. The imperceptible bubbles undoubtedly contained extremely pure starry sky energy, which was also the fundamental reason why Zixian Island was so full of energy. The energy in these bubbles flowed into Zixian Island and was restrained by the protective array. It could not leak out, so it could be used for cultivation by the cultivators on the island. It could also be absorbed and stored by the protective array. The situation on the other spiritual islands should be similar, but there were strong and weak ones. Therefore, the levels of the spiritual islands were different. The energy in these bubbles was undoubtedly transformed from the water of the Thousand Sea. Lu Yi guessed that this transformation should be related to the minor constellation hall. Otherwise, the water of the Thousand Sea would not be transformed for no reason. In other words, it was because of the minor constellation hall under the Thousand Sea that the various spiritual islands on the Thousand Sea existed. Lu Yi was not in the mood to investigate this. He circled around Zixian Island and found a suitable place to place the minor constellation hall. Then, he began to adjust the power of the minor constellation hall. Ever since he obtained this starry sky absolute treasure, he had never unleashed its full power. Regardless of whether it was when he was building the unparalleled island or the three-world island, the power of the minor constellation hall was greatly suppressed under his adjustments. It was because building a spiritual island was not done overnight. It was a gradual process. This time, Lu Yi did not suppress it. The power of the minor constellation hall could be fully unleashed. In an instant, Lu Yi clearly felt an invisible, terrifying suction force from where the minor constellation hall was. The surrounding seawater flowed into it, and in the blink of an eye, it was transformed into pure energy, which then formed bubbles of various sizes that surged upwards. This was an extremely spectacular scene. At first glance, it was as if an invisible sea beast was breathing underwater. The largest bubbles were almost the size of a house, and the smallest could accommodate a person. Lu Yi was secretly shocked. Compared to when he placed the minor constellation hall under the three-world island, its power had increased by more than 100 times. He was increasingly certain that his idea could come true. He only hoped that Zixian would like this great gift he had given her. After setting up the minor constellation hall, Lu Yi did not leave too far. Instead, he quietly floated upwards and waited at a depth of less than 100 feet from the edge of Zixian Island. At the same time, he activated the power of his talent tree and refined the seawater to cultivate. Speaking of which, his main purpose in returning to the myriad phenomenon sea this time was to advance to the late-stage Yuyao realm. However, because of Zixian, he did not have the time. At this time, Purple Jade Island was shrouded in a gloomy atmosphere. After the previous tragedy, the morale of the star constellation Yao cultivators was low, and the Yu Yao cultivators were irritable and frustrated. Lionheart, Hu Guang, Bao Yuyu, and a few other Yu Yao cultivators who had not registered themselves were gathered together. The atmosphere was heavy and silent. After a long time, Lionheart finally spoke. "Do you have any good ideas to deal with this situation?" The Yu Yao cultivators did not speak. If they had a good idea, they would have spoken long ago. Lionheart turned to look at Hu Guang. "Junior brother Hu, please speak." If Lionheart had the strongest battle prowess on Zixian Island, then Hu Guang had the brightest mind. It was not that the Yao race was not intelligent. In fact, many Yao race were very intelligent. However, because their Yao nature was difficult to suppress, they were often easily swayed by their emotions and were slightly rash. Hu Guang pondered for a moment before speaking. Zixian suffered heavy losses during the previous failure. The blame is on me. I underestimated Lu Ye's strength. Not only did we lose hundreds of star constellation halls, even junior brother Ape Che. Lionheart raised a hand to stop him. "There's no need to blame yourself. Right now, all the cultivators in the 10,000 manifestations sea are watching us. If we don't move back to the city as soon as possible, Zixian's reputation will be ruined. Junior brother, if you have any ideas, feel free to speak them." Hu Guang nodded. Yu Yao has always been the key to the battle for the myriad manifestations Sea's spiritual islands. Now that Junior Brother Hu and Junior Brother Yuan have died in battle, 2 of our registered Yu Yao are missing. My intention is to send Junior Brother Chai and Junior Brother Lang to the Myriad Manifestations Island as soon as possible to make up for the missing Yu Yao. This way, our island will have 5 Yu Yao at our disposal. When the time comes, Senior Brother will stay behind to guard the island while I lead the other 3 to dispatch troops. No matter how strong that Lu Yi is, the 4 of us should be able to stop him. Lionheart nodded slightly. Hu Guang's suggestion was reasonable. There was nothing new about it. However, this was indeed the only way. Zixian cultivators could not remain in hiding forever. Given the current situation, Zixian was the center of attention of countless cultivators. They had to do something. This was also what he was thinking. Hu Guang continued, however, there's a problem right now. Lu Yi is entrenched 500 kilometers away. If Junior Brother Chai and Junior Brother Lang leave the island, he will definitely know. Therefore, we have to create an opportunity for you 2 to leave without anyone noticing. Lionheart nodded. If that's the case, I'll personally deal with Lu Yi. Hu Guang immediately said, I'll stand guard for Senior Brother. Bao Yu hurriedly said, I'll go too. Hu Guang shook his head. Junior sister, you have to stay on the island in case anything happens. Only then did Bao Yu reluctantly agree. Hu Guang then looked at Junior Brother Chai and Junior Brother Lang. Junior brothers, when you go out, remember to use the spirit talismans you traded with the human tribe. Do not expose your whereabouts. Junior Brother Chai and Junior Brother Lang nodded in unison. Yes. After the discussion, the Yu Yao cultivators immediately took action. 500 kilometers away from Zixian, Lu Ye's talent tree clone was still sitting motionlessly under the cover of the formation, monitoring Zixian's movements. Suddenly, there was a movement in Zixian's defensive formation. Immediately after, 2 figures rushed out one after another, heading straight for him. The talent tree clone took a closer look and discovered that the newcomers were Lionheart and Hu Guang. The 2 of them came one after the other in an aggressive manner. Moreover, as soon as they left the island, Lionheart roared, Lu Yi, come and die. He was afraid that others would not know that he had left the island to seek battle. The countless cultivators watching in the surroundings had been bored for such a long time. When they heard Lionheart's voice and saw his figure again, they were all refreshed. They felt that a good show had finally begun. They had not waited in vain. On the extremely small deserted island, the talent tree clone blinked and immediately soared into the sky, flying into the distance without looking back. He did not have the mountain pan saber or even the sword gourd. As a weapon cultivator, how could he compete with an expert like Lionheart? Not to mention, Hu Guang had come out with Lionheart. Therefore, Lu Yi had no intention of fighting him at all. His plan had already begun. As long as he waited for a while, it should be effective soon. Naturally, he was not in the mood to be entangled with Lionheart. The surrounding cultivators who saw this scene from afar were speechless. They had heard of Lu Ye's many previous feats. How awe-inspiring it was for him to kill his way in and out of Zixian's fleet by himself. Why was it different from the rumors when they saw it with their own eyes? End of this chapter. Chapter 1856. When Lionheart and Hu Guang left the island and headed straight for Lu Ye's location, Junior Brother Chai and Junior Brother Lang had already activated their talismans to conceal themselves and silently left Zixian, heading in the direction of All Manifestations Island. Outside the Purple Jade Island, 3 figures were chasing after each other. They quickly disappeared into the distance, making the cultivators who were waiting to watch the show feel lonely. They had all heard of Lu Ye's feat of killing Yuan Che with a single slash, so they wanted to see for themselves how powerful this number 1 person under the sun was. In the end, they were greatly disappointed. For a moment, they couldn't help but wonder if Yuan Che's death was really as the rumors said. This was because if Lu Yi really had such strength, he couldn't have done nothing against Lionheart and Hu Guang's pursuit. At the very least, he should have fought them. However, that wasn't the case. The 2 Yu Yao from Zixian took the initiative to fight, while Lu Yi fled in panic. Lionheart was furious. Ever since he had fallen out with the Three-World Island, Zixuan had lost 3 Yuyao and several hundred star mansions. On the other hand, only Wei Pe had been swallowed alive by him. In comparison, the losses were far too great. This made him, the first island master, seem very useless. Hence, he was merciless in his pursuit of Lu Yi. Moreover, he did want to test Lu Ye's strength personally. However, Lu Yi didn't even fight him. He only cared about escaping. This made him even angrier. Fortunately, Hu Guang was calm enough to call for Lionheart to stop at the critical moment. Otherwise, if they continued to chase like this, Lu Yi might find an opportunity to kill them one by one. Hu Guang was extremely fearful of the blade Lu Yi had used to kill Ape Che. Junior brother Chai and junior brother Lang had already left the island. They had achieved their goal. There was no need for them to continue fighting Lu Yi. After a short while, the 2 Yuyao returned to Zixuan. Lu Ye's figure reappeared on the small desolate island 500 li away. He stared at it for a while. Suddenly he sensed something and hurriedly sent a message to Tang Jun. Zixuan probably sent Yuyao to the island of versatility to register. Lionheart and Hu Guang's request for battle seemed like a normal response. However, there were still some suspicious points about it. If the Three-World Island were to face such a situation, the most important thing to do would undoubtedly be to replenish the Yuyao that they had lost. Only then would they have more Yuyao to use in the upcoming battle for the spiritual islands. This way, they would not be restricted by the fact that they were outnumbered. If that was the case, the Three-World Island could find an opportunity to stop Zixuan and Yuyao. Tang Jun quickly replied, "Don't worry, we've already made arrangements." Lu Yi was stunned. Who could have such foresight? On his side, he had inferred from Lionheart and Hu Guang's reactions, but he did not expect that the main island had already made arrangements in advance. Although this old man doesn't have any fighting ability, the amount of salt I've eaten is much more than the amount of roads you've walked. How could I not have anticipated such a small matter? It's fine if Zixuan and Yuyao don't go to the island of versatility, but if they do, I'll make sure they don't return. Tang Jun's reply was filled with pride. Lu Yi secretly looked forward to it. Although he did not know whether his guess was right or wrong, regardless of whether it was right or wrong, they would not suffer any losses. On the contrary, if his guess was right, then Zixuan and Yuyao, who were heading to the island of versatility, would be in trouble. On the island of versatility, there was a tea house opposite the registration hall. Back then, Lu Yi had brought Ma Shangxi here to drink tea. At this moment, a young man was sitting where he had sat back then, his gaze occasionally glancing at the hall opposite. Zhou Chuang of the Four-World Island. No one would have thought that the person in charge of surveillance here was a cultivator from the Four-World Island, who seemed to have no connection to the Three-World Island. This kind of surveillance was undoubtedly hidden and deadly. Even if Zixuan's Yao cultivators discovered Zhou Chuang's whereabouts, they would not make much of a connection. A day later, Zhou Chuang suddenly raised his eyebrows and looked in the direction of the opposite hall. At this time, there were 2 more figures at the entrance of the hall. Although they were disguised and concealed, and nothing special could be seen at first glance, the vigilance of these 2 people made Zhou Chuang wary. Those who could enter the main hall were basically Yuyao cultivators from the various spiritual islands. Usually, everyone would enter openly. After all, it was not a shameful thing to register. However, the sneaky behavior of these 2 was indeed suspicious. Zhou Chuang immediately understood that Yu Er had shown herself, and immediately sent a message out. Not long after, the 2 cultivators walked out of the hall again. Zhou Chuang left a few pieces of spiritual jades behind and left the tea house. Needless to say, the 2 cultivators were very cautious. After exiting the hall, they did not leave the island of versatility immediately. Instead, they walked around the island. Zhou Chuang almost exposed his whereabouts a few times. Fortunately, he was cautious enough. Another day later, the 2 cultivators finally left the island of versatility through a ferry port. This ferry port was located in the opposite direction of Zixuan. This caused Zhou Chuang to doubt his judgment for a moment. If the other party was really a purple jade demonic cultivator, There was no reason for them to leave the island of versatility in this direction. However, if the other party did it on purpose, it would make sense. Regardless, the fishing net had been cast, and the fish had shown itself. Whether the other party was a purple jade demonic cultivator or not would be revealed later. 2 hours later, somewhere in the sky above the 10,000 Elephant Sea, 2 Yu-Yao cultivators who had just left the island of versatility saw a figure standing in front of them, blocking their path. This caused them to be extremely vigilant. After taking a closer look at the other party's face, one of the Yu-Yao cultivators turned pale with fright. Not good, it's Ma Shangxi. Zi Xian had been guarding the Three-World Island for a year. Zi Xian was very clear about who the Yu-Yao of the Three-World Island were. Even if she had not seen them personally, she had seen images of the Three-World Island's Yu-Yao. Therefore, the two of them immediately recognized that the person blocking their path was Ma Shangxi of the Three-World Island. "It's an ambush!" the other Yu-Yao exclaimed. When the two Yu-Yao realized that something was amiss, they immediately scattered, clearly wanting to flee in different directions. Zhong Yu. On the other side, Ma Shangxi was overjoyed when he saw their reactions. He knew that Zhou Chuang's information was correct. These two were indeed demonic cultivators from Zi Xian. Moreover, after they had activated their powers, there was no longer any way to conceal the traces of their demonic qi. As soon as he finished speaking, he locked onto one of them and chased after them. At the same time, 2 figures shot out from a deserted island below, one after the other, chasing after the other fleeing cultivator. The 2 people who had suddenly appeared were both late-stage Yu-Yao cultivators. They were Luan Xiaoa and Yen Miao. The 2 Yu-Yao cultivators were not weak, but they were still much weaker than Ma Shangxi and the others. This was because they were only mid-stage Yu-Yao cultivators. How could they have a good time when they were targeted like this? Luan Xiaoa was furious at Zi Xian's actions for causing Wei Po's tragic death. She showed no mercy and killed Zi Xian and Yu Yao on the spot. When they rushed over to meet up with Ma Shangxi, they found that the battle had already ended. A late-stage Yu Yao cultivator against a mid-stage Yu Yao cultivator. Ma Shangxi had the absolute advantage. Coupled with the treacherous blood sea technique, once he trapped his enemies, they had no hope of escaping. Over the past 2 days, some strange things had happened on Purple Jade Island. The energy on the island had suddenly become much denser, and the situation was becoming more and more intense. This was very abnormal. Purple Jade Island was already a top-grade spirit island. In the entire Wanxiang Sea, the energy on the island was also of the densest level. It allowed Zi Xian's demonic cultivators to cultivate more quickly and conveniently here. Although the energy on the island would fluctuate occasionally, the fluctuations were not too great. For tens of thousands of years, a kind of balance had been maintained. However, since 2 days ago, everything had changed. If such a change occurred under normal circumstances, it would undoubtedly be a good thing for Zi Xian. After all, everyone hoped that the energy on their own spirit island would become denser. This meant that the cultivation environment would improve. However, Zi Xian was currently in troubled times. Any abnormal changes could not be taken lightly. Under Lionheart's orders, Hu Guang personally led a group of cultivators to investigate the situation. Purple Jade Island was the demonic cultivators' foundation in the Wanxiang Sea. Even the slightest bit of carelessness could not be tolerated. Before they figured out the cause of this change, no one could be at ease. After 2 days of observation, Hu Guang finally made a discovery. In fact, some of the changes were very obvious. "Senior brother, I walked around the island and found a large number of bubbles rising from the sea. The energy on the island has increased tremendously because of these bubbles." Lionheart frowned. Where did these bubbles come from? Hu Guang shook his head and said, "I don't know." After all, he could not go deep into the Wanxiang Sea to investigate. He changed the topic and said, "Senior brother, the seawater of the Wanxiang Sea is condensed from the energy of the stars. Strictly speaking, the vast Wanxiang Sea can be seen as a huge piece of spirit jade. However, there are too many impurities in it and it is extremely corrosive. Therefore, no one can enter it to refine and cultivate." "Of course I know this." "Continue." There are many spirit islands in the Wanxiang Sea. There are even more deserted islands. The difference between the two is that there is energy under the spirit islands, but there is no energy on the deserted islands. Therefore, cultivators like us can station ourselves on the spirit islands and set up a formation to restrain the energy for our own use. However, the key is, how did this energy come about? What do you think, junior brother? Lionheart asked. Hu Guang said, I don't have a specific idea. It's just a guess. If the entire Wanxiang Sea is compared to a huge piece of spirit jade, then there should be some hidden passages on the surface of the spirit jade that cannot be seen. This allows the energy inside the spirit jade to escape through these passages. If an island happens to be located above these passages, then this island will become a spirit island. The different sizes of these passages will cause the difference in quality even if they are all spirit islands. Lionheart thought for a while and said, Junior brother's guess is quite interesting. This was also why he valued Hu Guang. Hu Guang was quick-witted. With just a few words, he had made a concrete association. Moreover, from the looks of it, this conjecture might be true. Based on this conjecture, then there is an explanation for the changes on the island. Hu Guang said with assurance, the passage below the island that allows the energy of the Wanxiang Sea to escape has suddenly become bigger. End of chapter. Chapter 1857. Due to the sudden increase in the size of the hidden passageway, the influx of energy from the Wanxiang Sea into Purple Jade Island had increased tremendously. This had changed the cultivation environment of Purple Jade Island. Junior brother, in your opinion, is this change a good thing or a bad thing for the island? Lionheart asked again. It's a good thing. Hu Guang replied, but it's also a bad thing. The good thing is that the energy on the island is getting denser and denser. This way, the cultivators on the island will have an easier time cultivating. What about the bad thing? Hu Guang's expression was solemn. If this situation continues, I'm afraid the great formation of the island won't last 3 years. Why is that? Lionheart was puzzled. Although he was terrifyingly powerful, he knew nothing about formations and had never come into contact with such things. This was a common problem among demon cultivators, and he was not the only one. Therefore, cultivators who were proficient in Outer Dao were extremely rare in the demon clan. Naturally, Hu Guang knew this and patiently explained it to Lionheart. Senior brother, if the energy escaping from the passageway under the island is not restrained, it will dissipate directly. Therefore, regardless of whether it's the island or the other spiritual islands, a great formation will be set up to isolate it from the outside world. This way, the energy escaping from the bottom of the sea will be gathered on the island for the cultivators on the various spiritual islands to cultivate. Of course, because this kind of energy dissipation happens all the time, it's not enough to be completely consumed by cultivators alone. This is why the Great Formations function is highlighted. The energy that can't be consumed by cultivators will be absorbed by the formation base of the Great Formation and become energy reserves. At the same time, maintaining the Great Formations operation consumes energy as well. Therefore, by adjusting the power of the Great Formation, the energy within the various spiritual islands can be maintained in a balanced state. Lionheart's eyes flashed. Is this the reason why the Great Formation's power was adjusted just now? Naturally, the changes in the Great Formation could not be hidden from his senses. Just before Hu Guang arrived, he clearly sensed that the Great Formation's defensive strength had increased. This meant that the Great Formation's power had increased. The most obvious change was that the light screen that enveloped the entire Purple Jade Island had become much brighter. That's right. Hu Guang nodded. Because too much energy has been released in the past 2 days, more energy needs to be consumed. Otherwise, it will put pressure on the Great Formation. This adjustment is only temporary. If the island's situation continues, the Great Formation's power will need to be continuously adjusted. Because of the accumulation of energy over tens of thousands of years, the island's Great Formation base has accumulated enough energy. We don't need more energy reserves now. Lionheart said, if that's the case, we'll activate the Great Formation's power. Hu Guang laughed bitterly. If we really do that, the formation won't be able to last for too long. Although the quality of our formation base and pivot is very high, there's still a limit to how much they can bear. It's not a problem for the formation to operate to its limit for a short period of time, but this is not a long-term solution. Furthermore, what worries me the most is that this situation will continue. If that really happens, our defensive formation will explode. Lionheart was stunned. Is it not a good thing to have too much energy? Going too far is as bad as falling short. Lionheart pondered for a moment, then said whimsically, "What if we open a gap in the Great Formation and let the energy escape through the gap?" Hu Guang nodded. That's a feasible method, but it's best not to do it unless it's absolutely necessary. Lu Yi of the Three-World Island is watching from the outside. No one knows what he's thinking or what he plans to do. Once a gap is opened in the Great Formation, it's easy to expose a flaw. Lionheart said, "I'll leave this matter to Junior Brother. You have full authority to decide. There's no need to discuss it with me." He knew nothing about formations, so it was better to leave it to Hu Guang. Hu Guang knew this would be the result, but Lionheart was the first island master. There were some things he had to report. He changed the topic. Looking at the time, Junior Brother Chai and Junior Brother Lang should be on their way back, right? I wonder how they're doing over there. Lionheart said, "They sent me a message half a day ago. Everything is going well." Just as he said this, the sound talisman suddenly vibrated. Lionheart smiled. Junior Brother Chai sent another message. He should be back soon. His two junior brothers were both in the middle stage of the Moon Jade Realm. If they returned, he and Hu Guang would have to chase after Lu Yi to prevent him from intercepting his two junior brothers again. After inspecting the sound talisman, the smile on Lionheart's face suddenly froze. He then roared, "Outrageous!" Hu Guang was shocked. "What's the matter, senior brother?" Lionheart looked at him. The Three-World Island made preparations. My two junior brothers were ambushed 2 hours after leaving the island of Versatility. I'm afraid they won't be able to return. Junior Chai was the one who had sent the message to him. Junior Chai was in an extremely dangerous situation when he sent the message because he was being attacked by 2 women from the Three-World Island. He had risked his life to send a message back. He wanted to tell Lionheart and the others who had killed them. Hu Guang's face paled. He hurriedly took out his sound talisman to check. Indeed, he found that Junior Brother Chai and Junior Brother Lang's sound talismans had no reaction. This undoubtedly meant that his 2 junior brothers had died. Hu Guang's eyes reddened and he gritted his teeth. The Three-World Island will be trampled over sooner or later. Not long after Lionheart received the news, Lu Yi also received news that the ambush had succeeded. He felt slightly regretful because it would have been better if he had captured the 2 Moon Jade Realm cultivators alive. That way, he could find a way to infiltrate Purple Jade Island. However, one of the Moon Jade Realm cultivators had sent a message before her death, which undoubtedly meant that Purple Jade Island had already learned of the situation. There was nothing that could be done about this. Even if Luan Xiaoa and Yen Miao teamed up to deal with a middle-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator, it would still be difficult for them to prevent the other party from desperately sending a message. Lu Yi narrowed his eyes as he looked in the direction of Purple Jade Island. Not long ago, he discovered that Purple Jade Island's protective barrier had brightened slightly. This undoubtedly meant that the other side had adjusted the barrier's power to deal with the increasingly dense energy fluctuations on the island. He had long since anticipated this and knew that this wouldn't be the first time the other side had adjusted the barrier, so he wasn't in a hurry and simply waited patiently. Another day passed, and the Violet Jade Island's Grand Protective Array became brighter, and in the next few days, the Grand Protective Array's Grand Protective Array changed several times. 10 days later, Purple Jade Island seemed to have turned into a half-moon from afar. The barrier's brightness could be said to be the brightest in the innumerable phenomena see. Many cultivators who had yet to leave the vicinity clicked their tongues in wonder. No one knew what Purple Jade Island was doing. Adjusting the barrier's power was something that would only be done when an enemy attacked the island. This was because adjusting the barrier's power would consume more of the island's energy reserves, but it would also make the barrier stronger. However, there was no battle on Purple Jade Island, and the barrier's power had greatly increased. This caused countless cultivators to be puzzled. Had Purple Jade Island's energy reserves already reached such a level? They were simply squandering the energy reserves. Some cultivators from low-level and mid-level spirit islands felt their hearts ache. They felt that Purple Jade Island was recklessly squandering natural resources and didn't know how to cherish them. What made them even more speechless was that this adjustment was not the limit. A few days later, the barrier's brightness reached a new high, and the entire spirit island became a glowing half-sphere. As a top-level spirit island, the barrier's barrier was already extremely tough. Now that its power had greatly increased, Lu Yi was confident that he could break Purple Jade Island's barrier with just the red talisman, but now it was absolutely impossible. He had to rely on Rizhao to have a chance. For a time, countless cultivators who received the news rushed over to watch from afar. The 1,000-mile radius of Purple Jade Island became extremely lively. This kind of rare event was rare. If they missed this opportunity, no one knew when the next one would be. Lu Yi was happy because the constant adjustment of the barrier meant that his plan was developing perfectly. If this continued, he felt that it wouldn't be long before Purple Jade Island's barrier would explode. In fact, fundamentally speaking, it was not that the barrier itself would explode due to the huge amount of energy, but that the barrier's foundation could not withstand the destruction of more energy reserves. The barrier's foundation was the foundation of the barrier. If the barrier's foundation was destroyed, the barrier would naturally cease to exist. Just as Lu Yi was waiting for the show to begin, he was surprised to find that the barrier no longer changed. It maintained its brightness and power as if it had reached a state of balance. This made him feel a little puzzled. However, he soon understood why. Purple Jade Island had taken the initiative to open a gap in the barrier. In this way, the energy on the island could escape through the gap and no longer bring pressure to the island. He heard the news from the cultivators who came to watch. After learning the reason, the talent tree clone personally went to check from afar and found that the situation was as expected. On the other side of Purple Jade Island, there was a gap about 10 feet long. After looking at the gap for a while, Lu Yi blinked. At the same time, his original body that had been cultivating under the sea opened its eyes. He quickly dived and soon came to the place where the minor constellation hall was set. He raised his hand and pressed it. With a thought, the seawater that was crazily pouring into the minor constellation hall suddenly accelerated several times. Huge bubbles rose from the cauldron of the minor constellation hall. The scene was far more magnificent than before. For a long time, the minor constellation hall had been in a state of automatic operation. What Lu Yi needed to do was to adjust its power and then place it in place. However, this item was still a treasure among treasures. It could operate on its own, but it could also be activated by someone. Moreover, the latter was much more efficient than the former. However, Lu Yi had never done so, because once he did so, he wouldn't be able to move. However, he had to do so now. By opening the gap in the barrier, Purple Jade Island had reached a balance with the island's energy. So, he only needed to break this balance. Moreover, Purple Jade's response made him see an opportunity to end the battle quickly. Needless to say, Purple Jade Island had made a bad move. Without the gap, he would have to wait a few more days to break the barrier. End of this chapter. Chapter 1858. Hu Guang had been under a lot of pressure lately. He realized that ever since the banquet, he hadn't had a single day of peace. Putting aside the loss of Yu Yao and the many cultivators from the constellations, there was actually a problem on the island as well. For some reason, the energy seeping out from the sea had suddenly increased greatly, causing him to have no choice but to adjust the power of the protective Grand Formation several times. At this point, the Grand Formation that had protected Zixien for tens of thousands of years was practically in a state of overload. Even so, it still couldn't consume more energy. He had no choice but to try the method Lionheart had suggested. He took the initiative to open up a gap in the Great Formation, allowing the island's energy to escape and reduce the pressure on the Great Formation. The results were obvious. After the gap was opened, The Great Formation finally stabilized. However, this wasn't a long-term solution. The Great Formation was a hole, and a gap meant a flaw, even if the gap was only about 10 feet wide. Normally, this flaw wouldn't be a problem, but now that Lu Yi of the Three-World Island was eyeing it covetously, Hu Guang had to be on guard. Just as he was thinking about how to solve the island's problem, he suddenly sensed an unusual change. He sensed it carefully, and his expression changed. Oh no! The energy on the island was increasing rapidly for some reason. He even saw a thin layer of energy fog forming. This undoubtedly meant that the energy on the island had reached an unimaginable level. This kind of cultivation environment was every cultivator's dream. If one could cultivate in such an environment, their efficiency would definitely increase by several times or even tens of times. If such a good thing happened on the Zishuan demon planet, Hu Guang would probably laugh his head off. However, this was only a spiritual island on the 10,000 manifestations sea. The Great Formation was the foundation of a force that occupied a spiritual island. Therefore, the first thing he had to consider was the pressure this sudden increase in energy was putting on the Great Formation. He hurriedly flew in a certain direction and quickly arrived at his destination. This was a node of the Great Formation, and several Yao cultivators were guarding it. When Hu Guang arrived, these Yao cultivators were in a state of panic. This was because the gap in the Great Formation, which was originally only 10 feet wide, had now been torn to 10 feet wide by the sudden increase in energy. Moreover, the gap was still increasing in length. The gap in the Great Array couldn't be opened casually. It required the monster cultivator to take the initiative to do so. Originally, with their joint efforts, they could maintain the stability of the 10 feet gap, but the changes on the island were obviously beyond their ability to deal with. Seeing Hu Guang arrive, one of the Yao cultivators hastily shouted, "Second Island Master." Hu Guang did not speak. His body flashed forward, and he took out a large array jade pendant. He waved it in front of him, and a mysterious light shot out from the jade pendant, landing near the gap. Immediately, the energy around his body surged, and the jade pendant in his hand flickered. It was visible to the naked eye that the gap that was constantly tearing apart was slowly stabilizing. The pressure on the few constellation demon cultivators was also greatly reduced. They all let out a long breath and looked at Hu Guang, their faces full of admiration. However, Hu Guang did not relax at all. Instead, his expression was solemn. After taking over the nodes of the formation, he could feel the pressure of the formation more clearly than before. It was a pressure that he could not imagine at all. Logically speaking, with such a gap, the energy on the island, no matter how rich it was, should be able to leak out. However, in fact, the energy that leaked out from the gap could not match the increase in energy. Even with Hu Guang's experience, he did not know what had happened under the 10,000 elephant sea that caused such a terrifying energy to leak out. Moreover, the location was on Purple Jade Island. Lionheart and Bao Yuyu noticed the situation here and hurried over to investigate. After communicating with Hu Guang, they both realized the seriousness of the problem. Even so, they had no way to solve it. It had to be said that this was simply the biggest joke in the world. As time passed, the energy fog on the island became more and more obvious. Originally, it was only a thin layer that could not be seen if one did not look carefully, but now, the energy fog had even spread to the ankles and was still increasing. In such an environment, even if they did not actively cultivate, the monster cultivators could feel the pure energy pouring into their bodies, helping to improve their strength. Hu Guang was fully focused. He carefully controlled the formation, expanding the gap little by little. The gap of 30 feet gradually became 40 feet, 50 feet, until it reached 80 feet, and then 100 feet. At this point, Hu Guang no longer dared to expand the gap. Usually, with the formation jade ring in his hand, he could open the gap however he wanted and make it as big as he wanted. However, the situation was different now. The entire Purple Jade Island was filled with terrifying energy that was so dense that it was almost tangible. The power of the protective formation was also pushed to the limit. In such a state, any change to the formation could cause unpredictable consequences. 100 feet was the limit. It could not be expanded any further. Otherwise, even with the formation jade ring in his hand, it would be difficult to control. What alarmed Hu Guang the most was that he could clearly feel that the protective formation was showing signs of instability. Therefore, not only did he not dare to expand the gap, but he also had to suppress the expansion of the gap. This was undoubtedly a great test for him. Fortunately, after his efforts, the situation on the island finally reached a kind of balance, but the pressure was still great. He could only hope that this sudden change would not last too long. Otherwise, he would be frozen and unable to move. Lionheart and Bao Yuyu stood to the side. Although they were anxious, there was nothing they could do to help. 250 miles away, the talent tree clone used its full strength to quietly observe the situation on Purple Jade Island. Seeing that the gap of about 10 feet was no longer expanding, it immediately understood that its plan was about to succeed. However, looking at the current situation, if it really wanted to succeed, it would have to add fuel to the fire on Zixian's side. He took out a sound talisman and sent a message. Immediately after, the talent tree clone turned into a stream of light and pounced towards Zixian. His actions attracted the attention of countless cultivators. They could not help but widen their eyes, waiting for the show to begin. Inside Purple Jade Island, at the gap in the formation, Hu Guang also saw Lu Ye's actions. At this time, the other party was pouncing towards them, obviously harboring evil intentions. It could even be said that he saw Zixian's predicament and wanted to add insult to injury. He could not help but shout, "Senior brother!" Lionheart was furious. "Despicable thief, I'll fight him." As soon as he finished speaking, a tall and sturdy figure had already rushed out of the gap, heading straight for Lu Yi. Lionheart's eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. Demonic chi surged around his body. Before he even reached Lu Yi, he had already launched a punch from afar. The violent demonic essence shattered the void, and this punch turned into a huge fist shadow, pushing towards Lu Yi. The clone dodged nimbly. Although it avoided a direct hit, the aftershock of the punch still caused the clone to lose its balance. With just this attack, Lu Yi knew that Lionheart was stronger than any of the Yu Yao he had encountered before. As expected of a powerhouse who was only one step away from becoming a Rizhao. If not for this accident, this guy would probably have become a Rizhao long ago. Lionheart's angry roar resounded throughout the 10,000 Elephant Sea. "Lu Yi, today is the day you die." The clone dodged a few attacks, but as the distance between them continued to shrink, it could no longer dodge. The main reason was that the opponent's attacks covered too wide a range, making it difficult to dodge. Suddenly, blood-red light blossomed, and a sea of blood spread out. The talent tree clone had already disappeared. Lionheart's ferocious fist slammed into the sea of blood, causing it to churn. Lionheart could not help but be taken aback by this sudden turn of events. According to the information he had gathered, Lu Yi of the Three-World Island was a weapon cultivator, so it was rather unexpected for him to suddenly display such a profound blood Dao secret technique. The vast sea of blood concealed Lu Ye's figure. For a moment, Lionheart couldn't detect Lu Ye's exact location. He frowned, then dove into the sea of blood. It had to be said that Lionheart was indeed a daring person. If it were any other cultivator facing this sea of blood, they wouldn't recklessly take the risk. Even more so, they wouldn't take the initiative to throw themselves into it, because doing so would mean surrendering the initiative of the battle. However, Lionheart didn't hesitate in the slightest. The fact that he could make such a choice undoubtedly showed his great confidence in his own strength. Lionheart was indeed strong. As he threw himself into the sea of blood, the vast sea of blood suddenly became restless and distorted. The cultivators watching from afar gasped in amazement. Although they couldn't see the specific battle scene because of the sea of blood's concealment, they could infer from the changes in the sea that Lionheart had the upper hand. Purple Jade Island's great island lord was indeed extraordinary. After less than 10 breaths of time, the vast sea of blood suddenly collapsed, revealing two figures within. Lionheart's aura was deranged, his fluffy hair exploding. He wasn't angry, but he was imposing. On the other hand, Lu Ye's figure staggered, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. Even his chest had caved in, revealing a fist print. Victory and defeat had been decided. The surrounding cultivators couldn't help but reveal looks of disappointment. The powerhouse known as the number one under the sun had recently risen to fame, and this was it? This was undoubtedly not in line with everyone's expectations of Lu Yi. They had thought that this would be a fierce battle, but they hadn't expected it to be a one-sided battle. They were shocked. Just how strong was Lionheart? Yuan Che had been killed by Lu Yi with a single slash, but now he only needed 10 breaths of time to break through Lu Ye's sea of blood and seriously injure him. In comparison, Lionheart's strength was simply unimaginable. Die! After breaking free from the sea of blood, Lionheart stretched out his hand and directly grabbed at Lu Ye's head. Although his figure seemed to be motionless, his huge and burly figure strangely appeared not far from Lu Yi. Lu Yi hurriedly retreated, raising his hand and sending countless streams of light towards Lionheart. Lionheart dodged and blocked, unharmed. When he looked up, he saw that Lu Yi had already turned around and fled, seemingly in a sorry state. A clown dares to act wildly in my purple jade island. Lionheart coldly snorted and chased after him without hesitation, not caring that several streams of light had broken through his blockade and rushed towards Purple Jade Island. Chapter 1859. Senior Martial Brother, Don't Chase. Hu Guang, who was trying his best to suppress Lionheart at the gap in the formation, couldn't help but be startled when he saw Lionheart chasing after Lu Yi. The surrounding cultivators were disappointed by Lu Ye's performance, but Hu Guang felt that something wasn't right. He had personally witnessed Lu Ye's strength. Although Lionheart was strong, he shouldn't have been able to make Lu Yi suffer so much in such a short time. Coupled with the fact that Lu Yi had used his doppelgangers several times before, Hu Guang vaguely felt that the Lu Yi that appeared this time might not be his true body, but rather a doppelganger. Thus, there must be a trap. The opponent's goal should be to lure Lionheart away. Although Hu Guang saw through this and warned him, Lionheart was currently filled with fighting spirit and was confident that he could kill the enemy in front of him. He simply ignored him and chased after Lu Yi. When Hu Guang saw this, he was both angry and anxious, and his heart inexplicably filled with anger. The Yao clan's weakness of being easily swayed by emotions was an unsolvable problem. Even someone as strong as Lionheart couldn't avoid it. He hurriedly said, "Junior Martial Sister Bao, be alert." If his guess was correct and the Lu Yi that appeared just now was only a doppelganger, then after luring Lionheart away, Lu Ye's true body would definitely appear. The question now was, where was Lu Ye's true body hiding? He should be nearby, most likely among the spectating cultivators. Perhaps he used a concealment technique to quietly approach. Hu Guang looked around, and Junior Martial Sister Bao also looked around, but she couldn't find him. Instead, there were a few rays of light from Imperial tools flying in their direction. These were Imperial tools that Lu Yi had used during his fight with Lionheart. Hu Guang glanced at them and didn't take them to heart. This kind of Imperial tool wouldn't be able to do much damage, and he even found it laughable. Lu Yi was already in the Yu Yao realm, but he still used Imperial tools in battle. This was a method that only cultivators of the lower four realms would use in a fight. There were several Imperial tools, and one of them flew straight towards the gap. Junior Martial Sister Bao flashed out and blocked Hu Guang's path, reaching out to grab the Imperial tool. At that moment, a strange change occurred. The magic power on the ordinary Imperial tool suddenly changed, and then suddenly became violent. A figure appeared there like a ghost. Junior Sister Bao's hand had already reached out. Her hand, which was originally grabbing the Imperial equipment, seemed to be grabbing at the figure that had suddenly appeared. Hu Guang, who was looking around for Lu Yi, suddenly turned his head and stared at the figure that had inexplicably appeared out of nowhere. He saw a face that made him feel both fear and resentment. It was none other than the Lu Yi he had been looking for. Their eyes met, and Hu Guang could only see boundless indifference. "Be careful!" Hu Guang shouted. Junior Martial Sister Bao also realized that something was wrong. Her reaction was extremely fast. Almost at the same time that Lu Ye's main body appeared, her demon chi fiercely surged. Her sharp fingernails shot out like sharp weapons and clawed at Lu Ye's chest. Even Lu Ye couldn't react in time to such a sudden attack. He had teleported directly from the bottom of the Wanxiang Sea, so while catching his opponent off guard, he also needed some time to react. Junior Martial Sister Bao's fingernails pierced through his protective magic power and into his flesh. Junior Martial Sister Bao's face lit up. She had succeeded. However, her expression soon collapsed because after her fingernails pierced 2 inches into Lu Ye's flesh, they couldn't go any further. Her wrist was suddenly grabbed tightly by Lu Ye's hand. Junior Martial Sister Bao fiercely exerted her demon chi, but she couldn't break free. She couldn't help but be shocked. Her opponent's physical strength was so strong. In terms of physical strength alone, humans were basically no match for demons. Only physique cultivators who focused on cultivating their physique had the ability to compete with demon cultivators. Weapon cultivators definitely didn't have this qualification. However, the fact was that a weapon cultivator of the human race had actually locked her wrist like a shackle, making her unable to move at all. Junior Martial Sister Bao had only experienced this kind of pure strength suppression from Lionheart. Even Hu Guang couldn't suppress her in this aspect. The sound of the long saber being unsheathed was extremely loud, like the cry of a phoenix. When the saber light flashed past, Junior Martial Sister Bao let out a muffled groan and staggered back. One of her arms had already disappeared, and blood flowed out like a waterfall from the broken arm. In fact, if she hadn't reacted quickly enough and shifted her body the moment Lu Yi attacked, the saber wouldn't have simply cut off her arm. At the same time that Junior Martial Sister Bao retreated, Lu Ye's gaze locked onto Hu Guang. Exerting force, the broken arm in his hand turned into a bloody mist. His figure leapt into the purple jade formation through the gap in the formation, and the mountain-coiling saber slashed down at Hu Guang. Wherever the saber passed, small cracks appeared in the void. Hu Guang's heart was filled with bitterness. In the face of such a terrifying attack, if he didn't dodge, he would be doomed. However, if he dodged, the purple jade formation would be in danger. There was no other choice. If he was killed by Lu Yi here, the formation would also collapse, so Hu Guang didn't hesitate and retreated the moment the saber fell. The saber missed, but Lu Yi had already expected it. His figure was like a shadow, and his saber was like a wheel, enveloping Hu Guang under his saber aura. A figure pounced over from the side, and in a swift movement, it turned into an afterimage in Lu Ye's peripheral vision. It was Junior Martial Sister Bao, who had lost an arm. This demoness was extremely tenacious. Not only did she not make a sound after losing an arm, but she also quickly counterattacked. At this moment, all his thoughts were on Hu Guang, wanting to kill him quickly. Facing Bao Yu's pounce, he had no time to dodge. In a hurry, he could only construct a defensive spirit rune to protect himself. When the huge force hit him, Lu Yi felt as if he had been hit by a mountain. His body flew to the side uncontrollably. The defensive spirit rune he constructed in a hurry shattered at the same time, and even his protective magic power was scattered by the collision. Suddenly, there were bursts of exclamations in the distance. The onlooking cultivators had seen Lionheart chase Lu Yi away with their own eyes. They were extremely disappointed with Lu Ye's performance, but they didn't expect a series of unforeseen events to occur on the Purple Jade Island. First, Lu Yi, who should have been pursued by Lionheart, appeared out of nowhere and broke into the Purple Jade formation through the gap in the formation. He chopped off Bao Yuyu's arm and then slashed at Hu Guang. Bao Yuyu took the opportunity to pounce to the side and knocked Lu Yi away. This unforeseen event that happened in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint was too much for everyone's eyes to take in, causing their emotions to fluctuate wildly. Then, an even bigger change occurred. As Lu Ye's figure flew out, the gap that was only 10 feet wide suddenly expanded. In the blink of an eye, it grew to 20 feet, 50 feet, 1,000 feet. The glowing hemispherical body of Purple Jade Island seemed to have been torn apart by an invisible force from one end to the other. A crisp sound came from the depths of every cultivator's heart. Bright light danced in the sky, as if countless fireflies had gathered and sprinkled down. At the same time, buzzing sounds came from various important places inside the Purple Jade Island. Those were the positions of the formation bases. The violent changes caused the entire spiritual island to shake. The spectacular energy rain made every cultivator dazed because no one had ever seen such a scene with their own eyes. The light gradually dimmed, and after a brief moment of brilliance, the entire purple jade island appeared in the cultivator's vision, making everyone realize something terrifying. The protective formation of the top-grade spiritual island, Purple Jade Island, which had been maintained for tens of thousands of years, was broken. There was an uproar. How many years had it been since the protective formation of a top-grade spiritual island was broken? No one had expected that they would be able to witness such a historic scene with their own eyes when they were just here to watch the fun. Of course, a broken protective formation could be rearranged, but the accumulation of tens of thousands of years could not be recovered. How could a rearranged protective formation compare to the one before? On Purple Jade Island, thousands of demon cultivators were dazed. Even Hu Guang and Bao Yuyu were so heartbroken that they could not breathe. The accumulation of generations of Purple Jade Island demon cultivators and the efforts of countless ancestors had been buried in their generation. Because of this, they were the sinners of the Purple Jade Island. They did not have time to grieve because an incomparably sharp killing intent had already enveloped them. The two Yu Yao demons hurriedly looked to the side and saw that Lu Yi, whom Bao Yuyu had pounced on, was already charging towards them with his saber. "Stop him together!" Hu Guang shouted angrily. Although he had seen Lu Ye's strength and was wary of him, at this moment, the enemy had already invaded his own spiritual island. Hu Guang had no reason to retreat. He and Bao Yuyu joined forces. 2 against 1, no matter how strong Lu Yi was, they could hold him back for a while. Lionheart must have seen the changes here and must be on his way back. The protective formation could not be recovered, but Lu Yi must die here. Hu Guang was sure that this Lu Yi before him was the original body and not a clone. Bao Yuyu still did not make a sound. Blood was no longer flowing from her severed arm. For a late-stage Yu Yao like her, although the injury was serious, as long as she survived this ordeal, she could still regrow it. The two Yu Yao demons charged towards Lu Yi, one on the left and one on the right. Many years of interaction had given them a tacit understanding of each other. The six-tailed demon fox's shadow appeared behind Hu Guang. Its furry tail swayed incessantly, and its eyes became eerie. There was a mysterious surge of spiritual energy. Everything in its path began to distort. It had activated the six-tailed demon fox's secret technique. This secret technique could create extremely realistic illusions that could even affect the real environment. If one's spiritual energy was not as strong as the opponent's, they would not even know how they died. Lu Yi! Hu Guang shouted angrily. He wanted to attract Lu Ye's attention so that he could unleash the full power of his secret technique. Living up to his expectations, Lu Yi turned to look at him. The moment their eyes met, Hu Guang was stunned for a moment because he suddenly discovered that Lu Ye's eyes had turned blood red, and there were extremely complex and profound lines quickly forming in those blood-red eyes. In the blink of an eye, those eyes had turned into extremely strange pupils. Then the entire world turned dark red, as if blood was flowing everywhere. Lu Ye's figure disappeared inexplicably. Only the two blood moons shone in the sky. The blood-red light spread out in all directions, bringing boundless deterrence and fear. Hu Guang's vision was filled with illusions. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.